Yes, indeed, and it is a special day for Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania as they all present their budget statements today, June 11th, 2026. In Kenya, a lot of anticipation on this budget, a lot of talk around it, both the budget estimates as well as the finance bill, and this is our special coverage of the same right here on TV47. It is TV47 Breakfast, our special coverage of the budget 2026-2027. My name is Freddie Ndimuli, karibu sana.
My name is Annie Odida, and that's right, that's what we're focusing on the whole day today. We'll be looking at Parliament as we wait for John Mbadi with the famous briefcase to make his way to Parliament at Wambia. We are looking at 4.82 trillion shillings, and we are trying to see that the variation between the expenditure and the revenue. As it stands, we have a deficit of about, is it 1.44 billion? Let me just check on that.
1.17. Yeah, okay.
1417, thereabout.
Yes, thereabout.
Yeah.
Well, in kitu kama ni kawaida hapa Kenya, you know very well you don't have that money, but you continue budgeting for it. Unajua tu you will borrow at some point.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know the famous question, are we living
within our means?
Within ama beyond ama nini?
Clearly we are living beyond our means.
We are living beyond our means.
I think that's the most obvious thing, because kama hauna hiyo pesa, hauna.
Hauna. And I was just trying to see how the government intends to just capture that. Now, we intend to borrow about 996 billion shillings from domestic market. Domestic market ni CC. So
from local banks.
From local banks, as here back at home. And of course, external borrowing pia as a country, we're targeting about 149 billion Kenyan shillings. So ukiangalia hiyo ya domestic borrowing, tukiongelelea matters 996 billion shillings. That means hata kwako as a taxpayer, when you're talking about interests, you know, maybe that will not be accessible to you and me kama uko na biashara. It might be hard for you to get some sort of loans, capital for your business and all. So that is what we'll also be focusing on later, tujue people's budget inasemaje.
And then even to make it worse, is that out of the 4.8 trillion shillings, about 1 trillion or 1.3 trillion is going back to debt servicing. The loans that we already have, we have to pay back, alafu wengine ndo tugawane. So out of 4.8, 1.3 ilipe deni, tunabaki na 3.5. Aya, sasa hiyo bado expenditure ya development na recurrent expenditure. Na bado tutaboro 1 trillion.
Lazima tuboro, lazima tu
interest. That's what we'll be looking at. But it's also a very special day for football lovers. World Cup 2026 kicks off officially today in the US, Mexico, and Canada. The very first match, the one between Mexico and South Africa, will be at Estadio Azteca in Mexico City. It kicks off at 10 p.m. East African time, about sijui ni saa ngapi yo. ET ndio wanasemanga ni saa ngapi?
East African time.
That's ET.
Ama
yetu ni EAT. Hiyo ni Eastern time. So tutafanya hesabu tuone hiyo game itakuwa saa ngapi. Even the opening ceremony. Which team have you picked a team to support this time?
Tulisema DRC ama?
DRC. DRC ni watoto hapa nyumbani. Hao tunawaangalia na tunawasupport either way. But you know, among zile teams special zile unajua, Germany, England, Brazil, Argentina, France. Which team do you support from those?
Wacha ndaka chini niangalie.
I've always supported France either way. I've always supported France.
Kwa nini? Why?
Hivyo tu mimi upenda wale players wao. The most important players, the ones I know, akina Thierry Henry played for France. So even when I was small, I've always supported France. But DRC, tuko na nini?
Kanasha na support nini director? Unajua kwa amesema Eastern time ni yao. Which team are you supporting, Kanash? Wewe wacha. Ivory Coast ni ya Afrika alafu? Portugal. All right.
So if you look at the dailies today, and you'll be forgiven to think that kuna budget sana. We're focusing, most of the papers are focused on the World Cup. Because at least that's something positive to look forward to. So that's a big discussion. Plus yesterday there was a very interesting discussion in Parliament about possibility of legalizing cannabis in Kenya. Sasa hiyo unasemaje wewe?
For me, you know, I know that is, you remember when Wajakoya was campaigning? Usually nikisikia cannabis, whoever comes to mind is just Wajakoya. What's his first name?
Wajakoya.
Who Wajakoya?
Anaitwa nani Wajakoya?
Yes, Wajakoya. You know, every time we talk about cannabis, is Wajakoya who comes to mind. I really wonder what it would have looked like with him trying to implement what he had anticipated with
including selling what was it, hyena balls. He proposed that. Anyway, so how this discussion ended up in before Bunge was that there was a statement sought by West Mugirango MP Stephen Mogaka on cross-border narcotics movement and the enforcement gaps. Kuna a lot of these products are coming from across the border in Tanzania.
Yes.
Zinakuja Kenya. So wakaanza kuzungumzia haya. It turned into a candid debate on banned cannabis. There was someone who had admitted, several MPs, they actually openly discussed personal or recommended use of bang. Ni kama wanaitumia.
Yes.
So wengine wanasema wanaichemsha ndani ya chai for back pain. One of the MPs cited medical benefits in countries like Mexico and South Africa and supported legalization. Even Nairobi woman rep called for a serious conversation, noting that bang is easily available even to children in homes. She even suggested broader use, including medical. If someone says they never smoked a joint, it might be miraculous. That's what she said. So apparently, but you see, these things you can discuss in parliament. Huku nje usijaribu kusema unavuta bangi tafadhali, utashikwa, because it remains illegal in Kenya. But at least MPs are talking about it. Interesting. Most of them admit they actually use it.
All right, so it's like they want it legalized now.
Well, it wasn't whether or not we should legalize it, but in that debate they said, what's a big deal?
It's neither here or there. They want it legalized.
That we use it. They were simply saying we use it already, so what's the big deal?
Oh, wow. So ni kitu inatumika.
Wabunge wenyu wanavuta bangi.
That is why they are so detached.
Bottom line, wabunge wenu wanavuta bangi.
Kabisa. Your 13th parliament. This is a very interesting parliament. Hata unajua producer ametupigia kelele na mambo ya bangi na
kwambia. Na support sana.
Amesema hataki kuwa legalized, but she's supporting its medicinal value.
So one of them actually proposed to those who say it has benefits to actually propose a motion and table a formal bill for debate rather than just talk. Because they're just talking, bring a bill in parliament and say, we need to legalize this officially because of 1, 2, 3 things, formally. Then we see if we can, because in some areas, in some other countries and jurisdictions, they do.
Yeah, and imagine they're going to table it. I feel like also our parliament, usually they just talk about these things casually so that they can get reactions from Kenyans. And then now they come and now say, hey, hata wa Kenya are supporting, let's now table it before parliament and let's discuss it. Ni kuwapima pia nini bangi, if at all you will accept.
All right.
Of which what I accept. Na kama producer na director
wamekubaliana wote.
Wamepigia debe hata Charles Ntere.
Ntere nilijua atapigia debe. Anyway, Get interactive. These are the big discussions. Of course, the budget being the main story, World Cup, and mambo ya bangi ni kama tazungumzia sana leo. Let's focus on the budget.
Right.
And at least World Cup kiasi, but the main story, of course, this is our special coverage of the budget 2026-2027. Interact with us throughout the show. Social media pages, right. TV47 Digital, that's X, on Facebook, TV47 Kenya, on Instagram, as well as on YouTube where we're streaming live. Use the hashtag TV47 Breakfast, hashtag Story ni yetu.
Right.
You can tag us as well.
Yes. At Annie_Dida is my handle.
Mine is at Freddy Ndimuli.
Tuangalie hali ya anga, tumeongea sana, but bado tunarudi tena kuongea sana.
Tutaendelea kuongea zaidi.
Au sio? Tuangalie weather.
Tujaguza bangi.
All right, it's budget day today. Sasa tuangalie weather inakaa vipi, if at all it's favorable for all of us. Kama utakuwa pale, you know, usually kuna kwanga na watu wanakaa pale kwa fence, wanakuwa barricaded somewhere there.
It's like they're waiting for something to come out of the budget.
Yes. Sasa tuone kama weather iko favorable for that.
Yeah.
Tunaanza wapi? Tuanze Kwale, light rains expected today. This morning it's 23 degrees, highs of 28 degrees. Nyeri, it's a mostly cloudy day. It's 14 degrees this morning, highs of 23 degrees expected in Nyeri. Isiolo, it's a mostly cloudy day. This morning it's 19 degrees, highs of 31 degrees expected in Isiolo County. Tuangalie Nairobi, it's a cloudy day. Sio mbaya, so mnaweza enda mkitaka. 15 degrees this morning, highs of 21 degrees. Hii hata ni kama hakuna jua itawachoma huko. Kitui, it's also a cloudy day. This morning is 17 degrees, highs of 27 degrees today in Kitui. And Migori, it's a mostly cloudy day. This morning in Migori County is 17 degrees, highs of 29 degrees expected today in Migori. And that's the state of the weather.
Yes, despite what you may feel about the budget or the World Cup, I think you need some inspiration today. This is a quote of the day.
Though filled with trials and setbacks, life also brings joy, love, and growth, making even its hardships meaningful and giving beauty to our journey through it all.
Is definitely full of ups and downs. Usi expect tu barabara inaenda nywe. Ukiona tu imeenda nywe hivyo sana, wewe ulishafika Sayuni. Anyway, let's come back and take a look at the papers today.
Right, Taifa Leo ndio tunaanza nayo leo. Acha katambe. Acha katambe sasa. That is what Taifa Leo wanaongelelea this morning. Kombe la dunia mwaka 2026, Mexico versus Afrika Kusini wanaanza 10 p.m. That is, wamekuwekea East African time ndio purpose to watch World Cup. Korea Kusini na Czech Republic, I assume that is Czechia.
What?
Czech Republic nimeitwa Czechia. In Swahili.
Oh,
all right.
But I've never heard the Swahili equivalent for Czech
Republic. I think that is Czech Republic. Kesho, 5 a.m. That is Korea Kusini na Czech Republic.
No, that's the most interesting part of this World Cup. That 5 a.m. when we were just doing the final preparations for our show, that's when the game is being played.
Yes.
Tutaweza kufocus kweli.
Tutakuwa tunaweka TV pale, tuna watch World Cup, tuna pause kidogo, tunasema good morning. Good morning, we are watching the World Cup. We hope you're watching as well. Come on.
Meaning by 7 a.m. that game is still on.
Yes.
And then analysis after that. Acha katambe.
Katambe sasa. Mahali wanasema ni Amerika, Mexico na Canada. Lini? Juni tarehe 11, that is today, hadi July tarehe 29. Time, okay, timu ni 48, 48 teams are playing. Mataifa ya Afrika, tuko na timu 10. Tuko na Senegal, Morocco, Afrika Kusini, Algeria, Ghana, Ivory Coast. Tuko na Misri. Misri ni wapi? Egypt. Right, Egypt. Tunisia, tuko na DRC na tuko na Cape Verde. So 10 teams to support in Africa if you want to support a team. Kumbe South Africa also play.
Nasikia Wakenya wakisema we will not support South Africa today, we are supporting Mexico so that South Africans cannot stay there long. They go back and protect their jobs at home.
Yes.
The jobs they say they have.
Yes.
Warudi kwao wakae huko. Wanafanya ni kwa World Cup.
Yes. Kwa nchi ya wenyewe.
Kwa nchi ya wenyewe.
Na wataki watu kwao. Ulaya, there are 16 teams. Amerika Kaskazini, 6 teams. Amerika Kusini, 7. Asia, 7. Oceania, 2 na viwanja ni 16. Habari kamili katika ukurasa wa 18, 19 na ukurasa wa 20 wa gazeti hili. Sawa. Bajeti pia imezungumziwa katika ukurasa mbele wa gazeti hili. Kule juu, the famous briefcase is also here. Lakini hii picha kwa nini inakaa AI? Umeiona?
Ya Taifa Leo?
Utaiangalia hapo. Nasema bajeti ngumu ya Ruto yasomwa leo. Bajeti ngumu 4.82 trillion shillings, the highest kama kawaida in East Africa. Waziri Mbadi kusoma bajeti ya shilingi hiyo 4.8 yenye pengo la shilingi 1.1 trilioni. Yeah, so that is what we were talking about, that the fiscal deficit for the next financial year stands at 1.14 trillion shillings, which tunatafuta kufill na domestic borrowing as well as external.
No, kunaweza kuwa na grants, a few grants.
Yeah.
No, kuna mtu anaweza tusaidia kidogo shilingi kadhaa.
Hapa wa Grants unajua
tunaendanga na ile bakuli kila mahali tunaenda. Natusaidia.
Unajua pia tuko na kitu tuna anticipate hapo. Pesa ngapi? 43.6 billion shillings kutoka kwa kuomba.
Yeah. Now loans are part of the loans I think are going to be like the housing levy will be securitized so that we can secure more loans. Tumejipanga boss, tumejipanga.
Kilichofanya Katibu Bitok kuhamishwa imezungumziwa pia katika ukurasa wa mbele wa gazeti hili. Alihamishwa Jumanne kutoka Wizara ya Elimu hadi Wizara ya Utalii. Sasa ukitaka kujua kwa nini alitoka hapo, on page 2 there's this story. Tayari rumors zishaanza, alisema, alifanya, hakufanya. Habari kamili katika ukurasa wa pili.
But I do support that. At least we need to see some movement when something big happens in Kenya. Some movement is necessary. Okay, people would have expected movement out, but movement nonetheless. Right.
Taifa leo hiyo.
The Star, fresh, independent, different. The main story is about Gachagua borrows Uhuru ICC playbook. He says he believes he'll be strong in position to fight impeachment as president. Remember, President Uhuru Kenyatta fought the ICC while he was president. So I think Rigathi Gachagua now will be pushing to become president so that he fights his impeachment, if at all the Supreme Court case or Court of Appeal stays beyond the 2027 election. But that's not the main story. It is the World Cup. Let the World Cup begin. And they have that coveted trophy there, the golden trophy. And some of the big players who are going to feature in this World Cup, including Haaland. Anakuanga nchi gani Haaland? Is a Viking, Netherlands huko. Norway. Hakim, Neymar, Ronaldo. Lakini Ronaldo bana is over 40 na bado kwa World Cup. Na mnasema watu wenye over 40 wamezeeka. Chungeni sana. Mbappe, Messi. Hata Messi pia kuna miaka. So this story has been covered extensively on pages 30, 31 and 33 kule nyuma. All the sports pages are about the World Cup. Niliona yule referee wa Somalia ambaye alirudishwa nyumbani. They really welcomed him home very well. Meanwhile, the Star has very little discussion on the budget, and this is very interesting. Anyway, this is a different paper. By there hakuna mahali kuna budget. It's a small story on page 11. I just took a small story on page 11. Body to present Kenya's biggest budget as tight economy bites. It's not even the main story on page 11. Iko hapo chini. Yet that is what every other paper has focused on. That's a Star. It is always fresh, independent and different. And you can get yourself a copy for only 60 bob.
Only 60 bob.
Only.
Sawa, tuangalie Daily Nation, manake pia ina focus on this same headline, World Cup. A World Cup like no other, they call it. That a repeat of 2010 fixture, the 2026 tournament kicks off today in Mexico with co-hosts facing South Africa. Wanasema pameni fast. Biggest ever, 48 nations including a record 10 teams from Africa. There's a longer show, 104 matches played over 39 days in 16 venues. The knockout stage, that is a round of 32, will be held for the first time. Champions race, eventual winner will play 8 matches in total. 3 hosts, there's United States, Mexico and Canada co-hosting the 23rd edition. Basically just what Taifa Leo has also talked about. There's a growing controversy that has been sparked by the US. Global outrage over travel bans and visa restrictions kama huyo referee wa kule
I also
Somalia.
learned that the reason why one or a number of our journalists didn't go was also the same.
Yeah.
Wanaleta Ebola huko lakini wanasema sasa sababu kuna Ebola huko sasa msikuje.
Imagine. There's also a bigger audience. Sijui kama nyinyi mnaenda talk to us. A record 0.1 million spectators expected to attend the matches. 0.1 million. Mmepata visa ya kwenda US.
What about the cost of the ticket?
Yeah, imepanda definitely.
Do you hapo bei, angalia bei ya ticket mo?
Most expensive. That it's ranging from $60 $60 to $6,000. Lakini hii ni 7,771 Kenyan shillings.
Yes, that's probably the cheapest ticket.
To where?
To the World Cup, to go into a stadium to watch the World Cup.
Oh, you know, I was thinking at sasa it's flight money from pale JK.
Hata kama unatoka neighboring Mexico unaenda
kuwatch,
hata kama uko Mexico na you're not taking a flight.
Yeah.
But you book the most expensive ticket, probably the VIP.
Yes.
It's only about 777,000.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, only. Ukiongeza 200,000 unapata milioni.
Hii ni ticket ya kuingia stadium, si ya flight kama vile nilikuwa nasema. All right, sasa that's as far as World Cup is concerned. That's the main story on the front page of Daily Nation. Ruto's elections budget. Right. This is a very consequential budget. Election year iko hapa. So, you know, some are saying this is a politically correct budget. Is it though? Because security comes second after education this year. But they're saying huge allocations for infrastructure projects like roads and railways feature in the last full year budget for President Ruto before next year's general election. So, next year bado kuna ile at a table.
But it will be too close to the budget day. You know, the fresh new year starts in July.
Yes.
So July and August is only a month apart. So this is the only budget that it can use to campaign. And next year itakuwa time bad.
Yes. Okay, 4.82 trillion. Once again, hiyo lazima tuambie mjue sisi wenye tunapenda ku live beyond what we can or what we have. Daily Nation, you have something else hapo? Naona
hapa kwa Ebola. Mambo budget will go to the standard, but kwa Ebola, because that's one story we keep forgetting, and even schools tumesahau. But on Ebola, now there's a question. Questions mount over missing Ebola units. Where are the other 22? You know, the CS says, oh, why are you talking about this one in Laikipia, the other 22? So guys are asking, okay, where are they? The other 22 quarantine units for Ebola. So those are just some of the questions. Remember that Bado people in Nanyuki are protesting against the setting up of that quarantine facility there. That's the only thing I wanted to add.
All right.
The Standard has decided to focus largely on the front page about the budget. And this is because for the very first time, I think the alternative government has come up with an alternative budget as well. Interestingly, it's a choice of photo.
Yeah.
Why did they choose Kalonzo as a main guy to talk about this one? The alternative. Why did they choose him? Previously siwa wanachagua mtu mwingine, inaweza kuwa Matiang'i, inaweza kuwa Gachagua. It's very telling, but anyway. Treasury CS unveils 4.8 trillion shillings. Hizo mambo tunajua, but the opposition, they call themselves United Alternative Government, unveiled a rival 4.3 trillion shilling budget, so which would reduce the budget by about $500 billion shillings. Yesterday, in which they proposed spending cuts, scrapping of SHA and housing levy. But now, how do you scrap off housing levy if it's already been securitized to get a loan? Remember, Rigathi Gachagua has always said, if we get into power, we're doing away with SHA and housing levy. But if you find that the housing levy has already been securitized, that means it's already gone. You imeenda and someone else owns it. There's nothing much.
Hapo walikuwa wajanja securitizing that.
Yes. Increased funding for health and education. So if you look at the opposition, they say total budget 4.32 against the current budget ya serikali 4.82. Projected ordinary revenue 3.7, which is more, almost by $1 trillion shillings to the projected ordinary revenue by the government currently at 2.99. So ni wapi watatoa hiyo 700 revenue, 700 billion shillings. Deficit up about 600 billion compared to the current 1.1 trillion shillings. So this is a United Alternative Government saying, kama ni sisi tungekuwa in power, our budget would look like this, it would save you this much. You can read more on that on pages 4, 5, 6, and 7. So a lot of focus on budget matters. But pale juu, the top strip, they gave space for at least the World Cup. World Cup bonanza, let the games begin. Nani mwingine amesema let the games begin?
Qatar
amesema let the World Cup begin. Let the games begin. The World Cup, I think, is the biggest sports bonanza in the world. Only compared to probably the Olympics. But I think the World Cup attracts a lot more attention globally as compared to the Olympics. So even back page in the matters to World Cup. In fact, they only have one sports page. This is a Standard. And it's just the last page, page 36. Let the games begin. So a lot of focus on the World Cup as well and the budget.
All right. Tuangalie sasa People Daily. Budget is the main story here. Mbadi walks a tightrope, and this year's budget is expected to be financed predominantly through domestic borrowing, venye tumesema, even as Kenya grapples with heavy debt repayment burden, growing demand for relief from high cost of living, and increasing pressure to fund key government programs. The size of the budget here, tunishawaambia, a debt repayment in budget with financing relying on domestic borrowing, we're looking at 2.3 trillion shillings. I had already mentioned, Apple domestic borrowing, we're targeting 997 billion shillings. That is here at home. External financing is projected at 116.2 billion shillings, representing about 10% of the deficit financing. Kule juu, why LSK President believes Gachagua can still seek public office. That is Charles Kanjama. That story is on page 3. Huku chini zaidi, environmental crimes court delays threaten Kenya's conservation efforts. Hawajazungumzia World Cup, lakini World Cup iko, but the main story here is about budget, which is also very important. I feel like Kenyans, na ulikuwa umesema hii kitambo, ati we don't quite take much attention to budget as well. Kwenye pesa inaenda.
Yeah, we don't focus on where.
Ati mpaka leo hata labda watataka kujua au wanangoja tu finance bill waseme reject.
Hapana, we are too harsh on that.
Let me tell you, no.
We're too harsh.
You know, yesterday I tweeted about it and said that today is budget day in East Africa, nini. You know, Joba Kenya bado hawajui leo kuna budget.
Lakini angalia, because shortly we'll be looking at the local, the regional dailies to angalia who's focusing on the budget more. Yeah. Angalia Business Daily kwanza.
Sawa basi tuvuke boda sasa.
Umemaliza Business Daily?
Business Daily pia bado wanazungumzia tu hiyo tu. Budget's new dilemma in funding 4.8 trillion shillings budget. Nothing new. Business Daily pia ni budget.
All right. Tukivuka boda tuende Uganda, tuanze na gazeti la The Monitor. The main story is not about the budget. Not even the World Cup. Yeah? Witnesses. Here's Dr. Besige's plot. The full treason trial of opposition leader Kizza Besigye, his aide Obeid Lutale, and UPDF captain Dennis Oola opens today, with the state expected to line up about 10 witnesses to testify against them. So that's the main story. It's that treason charges against Kizza Besigye. The budget has been mentioned pale juu on the top strip of the Daily Monitor. Kidogo tu, we're looking at the Daily Monitor in Uganda now. Story ndogo sana na iko on page 3. Yeah? It's about 2025-2026 budget, the hits and misses. Inajificha, you might not even know there's a budget in Uganda. Wako kwa Besigye. Hata World Cup, no mention of it. Yeah. We don't have the other paper, the New Vision, sababu walilala. Twende Tanzania. We start off with the Citizen in Tanzania. And the main story on the Citizen is about the budget, cost of living. All eyes on the budget speech. So in Tanzania, at least one of the papers focus more on the budget. Tanzanians are today closely following proceedings in Parliament with widespread anticipation that the government will outline concrete measures to ease the rising cost of living when it presents its 62.3 trillion shilling pesos za Tanzania budget for the next financial year. So at least the Citizen focuses on the budget in Tanzania. Tuangazie gazeti la Mwananchi. Gazeti la Mwananchi wanazungumzia nini? Singapore. Somo la Singapore kwa uchumi Afrika. Nyinyi mlidhani Singapore tu ni nyinyi mnajua kwenye iko. Ati kwa pande gani nyinyi mnaenda Singapore? Wa Tanzania pia wako barabarani. Rais Shan Mugaratnam ahutubia chuo kikuu UDSM akitaja njia ilizopita nchi yake kuyapita mataifa mengi ya Afrika ikiwemo Tanzania. Ataja vikwazo vinavyopaswa kuvukwa ili kupiga hatua. Rais wa Singapore yuko Tanzania na hiyo ndio habari ambayo imepewa kipaumbele. Lakini ni kilio au kicheko bajeti leo wanauliza. So masuala ya bajeti yamepewa na hiyo bunge yao inakaa very different. So at least wamezungumzia masuala ya budget huku Tanzania kidogo tu. Si kama Kenya. Kenya World Cup, hata wazungumzi World Cup by the way. They're not talking about the World Cup on the front page of the Citizen or the Mwananchi.
Ama sisi ndio tunapenda mchezo sana.
Even tunapenda mchezo. Wa Kenya tunapenda mchezo. Sio mimi nimesema, ni Ana amesema.
You've echoed what mwalimu has said.
Hiyo shauri yako.
Unajua Tanzania ni 3.08 trillion shillings. Kenyan shillings, the budget.
Nilifikiria hiyo, unajua 3.8 trillion ya Tanzania hiyo. Nafikiri watanunua gari kama 3 tu alafu wafu.
Hiyo ni kidogo sana, kwa hiyo ni currency yao.
Turejelee tuangalie karakacha. We start off with a cartoon on the Daily Nation. It has to do with the schools and what's happening there with the fires, which incidentally I cannot see. Most of the papers have moved on to the budget, and that's a very Kenyan thing, very typical Kenyan. We move on from very serious discussions very fast.
Kabisa.
So at least one of the cartoons still reminds us of that. Huyu jamaa who's a CS for education, anaitwa nani? Migosi Ogamba. Anasema in a hole, but I prefer to keep on digging. Tuko na shida, lakini tunaendelea tu. All right, that's a cartoon on the Daily Nation.
Unajua umesema nikakumbuka I saw a tweet. Somebody tweeted exactly what you said, that Kenyans we suffer from a dopamine problem. We hype up things and then tunashindwa to keep up with the momentum.
Very fast.
Shida iko wapi jamani? The Star inaongelelea World Cup as it kicks off, kule USA. There's somebody here who is seeing no evil, hearing no evil, and saying no evil. Ni nani?
Huyu ni jamaa wa FIFA. He's the president of FIFA. You see what's happening. Hiyo mguu yenye inapiga mpira, sasa it's kicking out people from the US, from the airport. So the World Cup kicks off, but it's kicking like one of the referees out.
Yeah.
But FIFA is not seeing that. Wamenyamaza tu. Why? Because they're in the US.
Huyo ni referee wa Somalia amekuwa
kicked out, amerudishwa kwa ile nini ya kwenda kupanda ndege na mizigo yake. Hata ameacha kiatu.
Na director Kanasha anapenda mipira. Unasikia venye ana contribute.
Anapenda mchezo sana.
Hapana, we support Kanasha.
Anapenda mchezo sana.
All right.
So huyo ni FIFA president, anaitwa nani? Anaitwa Fiorentina ama anaitwa nani? Gianni Infantino, yes. Gianni Infantino. That's a cartoon on The Star. Tuzungumzie cartoon ya The People Daily. Wamerudi, unajua for a few weeks now they've not been having a cartoon. Now wamerudi. So I have the luminaries of the United Alternative Government wanakaa pale. Kuna moja amebeba begi, anaelekea US, anasema I'll be away for 45 days. During this period I want to be left alone. But I thought he says he's going to Munyoro. Mambo ya kwenda USA sijui. Alafu wengine wanaambia very clever. Who doesn't know that he's going to watch the World Cup? So that's a third. That's a second cartoon talking about the World Cup.
Yeah. So finally, the one on the Standard talks about elections 2022, 2027, 2032. This is Hari. Na huko ni Ruto anajaribu kupanga. The president 2022 ashapanga imeingiana. 2027 anakuaje, and then 2032. But of course there's advices here naambia Wanjiku, the 2022 unwritten agreement here is power. All others are simply distractions to it. Huyo ni Hari ametuandikia pia majina hapo, so it's easy.
Yeah, Hari lazima atuandikie. Asipokuandikia majina utajua ni.
These are the caricatures and the stories making headlines locally and regionally as well. Across board ni budget. Because regional dailies haziongelelei World Cup zote.
In fact, it's only Kenya that we have the World Cup on the front page. In Tanzania, in Uganda, no mention of the World Cup.
Right. So ni budget tu ndio tuna agree on.
Lakini Kenya tumekubaliana tunapenda michezo. Anyway, interact with us.
All work without play.
Makes Kenya a dull state.
A dull state.
All right, interact with us throughout this show on TV47 Digital. That's our handle on X. TV47 Kenya on Facebook, Instagram, and on YouTube. And you remember to use the hashtag TV47 Breakfast, hashtag story ni yako, story ni yangu.
Story ni yetu. Before that,
let's take a look at the traffic in Nairobi. Hata kama tunangojea budget. Remember, remember that as the day goes by, some roads will be closed to traffic within Nairobi, especially Harambe Avenue, all the way from Treasury to Parliament Buildings. Of course, we do expect CS for Treasury. Atatoka na ile briefcase. Inakuanga imebeba kitu kweli?
I guess we'll never know.
Picha naye, then he might walk to Parliament. So Parliament Road is also will also be closed to traffic during that time. All right, so hii ni kama imezunguka hii. Okay, yes. So let's take a look at traffic in and around Nairobi, courtesy of Google Maps. And kama kawaida, Eastern Bypass is very heavy with traffic all the way from Utawala towards Embakasi, areas around KQ headquarters, areas around that interchange into Outer Ring Road, all the way to Cabanas. Heavy traffic there. The other road that has heavy traffic but looks better than it was yesterday, that's Thika Road. A bit of traffic at after Githurai, heading to Kasarani. Dots of traffic around Garden City Mall, heading towards town. And of course, once you get to KCA University, which is typical, traffic starts building up all the way to the Pangani interchange. Kiambu Road today, not so bad. Just a bit of traffic at Muthaiga Deep as you get towards the Pangani interchange. Jogoo Road, nothing to worry about this morning, just still a normal traffic pale Makadara. After that, it's smooth all the way into the CBD, including areas like Mudhurwa bus station, no traffic at all. A bit of traffic, areas around Marikiti, especially heading towards Kamukunji, coming from the railways roundabout, all the way to Landis Road roundabout, a bit of traffic there at this point, but ile roundabout, polisi wanajaribu kuguide magari, ndio kusiwe na mushkin baadaye. The main highway into the CBD from the southern part of the city is Mombasa Road, and both the expressway and the main road that is Uko Chini, zote they're green all the way into town. Wayaki Way, ABC Place, Westlands into the city, nothing to worry about. Kama kawaida, Ngong Road, Pale Junction, Prestige Plaza na City Mortuary roundabout, just a bit of traffic, but it's because of the junction. Other than that, everything else is normal. Kumbuka once again, Parliament Road, Harambee Avenue will be close to traffic, especially in the afternoon, as they anticipate the arrival of the CS for Treasury. John Badi na kijisanduku chake cha bajeti. That's the traffic this morning. Right, even as we anticipate the discussion we're going to be having mostly around the budget estimates and the budget statement to be presented before Parliament, many people are already sharing their views countrywide about the same. Let's now sample some of that discussion from Naivasha this morning. Willie Dennis Jiru is on standby. A very good morning to you, Willie Dennis. What are we anticipating? What are the people of Naivasha expecting from the budget statement to be read by the CS this morning? But just before we get to Willie Dennis, let's go to the headquarters of that county. This is Nakuru town. Mike Chalo is on standby. Mike, good morning. Tell us, watu wa Nakuru wanasema nini kuhusu bajeti ya mwaka huu?
Good morning and thank you so much, Fred. In Nakuru tuko poa, tuna maneno, ni baridi tu inatulima kama kitu ingine. This is the big day, the much awaited day in the Kenyan Parliament, the much awaited day maybe and to determine the Kenya's economy for the next 1 year. We are talking about a 4.8 trillion budget that is an increase of about 10% from last year's budget. We're talking about 460 billion more in the 2026-2027 Kenya's budget. We remember that the 2026-2027 finance bill is more concentrated on increasing the tax base and also maybe closing all the loopholes to make sure that we collect enough tax and the revenue in order to maybe sustain our budget. And will that maybe come to pass? That's according to the National Treasury CS Mbadi. Later on the day, we expect him to answer such questions. And with me, I have some of the residents of Nakuru, though our city is a bit slow. Naona we are in Kenyatta Avenue, lakini bado hatujaamka, but I have some of the residents with me ambao watakuwa wananiambia maybe what are some of the expectations in this year's budget. Habari zenu, tukianza na wewe, pengine ukianza na majina yako, utuelezee matarajio yako ni gani katika bajeti ya mwaka huu?
Okay, majina ninaitwa David, mkazi wa hapa Nakuru. Matarajio yangu makuu kwa bajeti ya leo ni hasa waweze kuguzia maisha ya chini. Kwa saizi ukiangalia mambo na mafuta, wangeangalia mambo na mafuta. Ya pili, wangeangalia maisha chini kwa sababu maisha imeenda juu na pesa nayo hakuna kuongezeka kwa mishahara za watu. So hiyo ndio tunatarajia leo budget, wasome ile budget yenye itaguza mwananchi wa chini kabisa.
Ni sekta gani ambazo unadhani kuwa zitaangaziwa zaidi? Pengine sekta ya elimu, sekta ya afya, kwa maoni yako ni sekta gani?
Sana zote za afya na elimu pia zinaguza mtu wa chini kwa sababu ukizingatia saizi unapata afya kama tukiona mambo na SHA tumekuwa tukiangalia lakini ijashika kasi, though kuna percentage inafanya lakini kuna percentage haifanyi. So tunaona kama naweza zingatia sehemu kama hiyo, na pia tuliona juzi kwa hiyo budget tukisoma pia kuna sehemu ambayo tunaona ni mzuri na kuna sehemu ambayo sio nzuri sana. Ukiona sehemu kama tax kwa mobile phones, wamesema watapunguza hiyo ushuru ama sio hivyo. So wakiweza punguza hivyo naona tena waguze vitu zitaguza tu mwananchi wa chini, na tunatarajia Mheshimiwa Mbadi aweze kuguzia.
Tunazungumzia bajeti ya 4.8 trillion tofauti na bajeti ya mwaka jana 4.24 trillion. Pengine sisi kama taifa tutaweza kukusanya ushuru ambao utaweza kufanikisha bajeti ya mwaka huu ikilinganishwa kuwa bado tuna deni la kitaifa.
Hiyo bajeti ya mwaka huu naona iko juu zaidi, na kwa sababu kwa public participation sikuweza kuparticipate, but kama ni maoni yangu wangeweza kupunguza iende kama ile people's budget yenye imeproposiwa na opposition.
People's budget yenye imeproposiwa na opposition. Mzee, maoni yako ni gani kuhusiana na hiyo people's budget yenye imeproposiwa na opposition? Serikali imepropose 4.8 trillion. People's budget ya opposition ni 4.32 trillion. Maoni yako ni gani?
Maoni yangu, kwa majina yangu ni Geoffrey Nyang'au, mkaaji wa hapa Nakuru, ambao mimi nimeona people's budget kulingana na proposal ile wametoa. People's budget ni safi kuliko ile ya serikali ambayo imetoa, kwa ajili maisha ya mwananchi ya kawaida iko chini sana. Watu wengi katika manyumbani shida siko, hakuna biashara inaendelea. Ikiwa ni mambo ya hospitali, ukienda hospitali unaambiwa SHA inafanya kazi, na ukisema ukweli SHA haifanyi kazi. Ukweli ito ukweli. Unajua watu ya serikali wakiwa naye kwa mfuko wanaona kama raia kawaida iko naye. Raia kawaida anateseka. Watu wengi ni wale wanalala njaa. Watu wanateseka, ni kujua serikali inajua na inafunga macho.
Pengine kipi kifanywe ili pengine kuweza kupunguza mzigo huu wote kwa mwananchi kwenye bajeti ambayo itakuwa inasomwa leo hapo baadaye na Waziri John Mbadi?
Bajeti ile inasomwa leo tungependa iguse mwananchi wa chini kwa maisha ile tunaishi naye. Mwananchi wa chini anateseka, japokuwa bajeti hii kulingana vile imetolewa ichagusa mwananchi wa kawaida. Hakuna biashara inaendelea, matuka mingi, vitu mingi ambao vinafanyika havina faida kwa mwananchi wa kawaida. Mwananchi wa kawaida ndio tegemeo la nchi hii, anateseka. Kwa hivyo tungependa serikali hii iwache kuchipika kifua, ijue kuna mwananchi ambaye inaangalia. Tungependa wa serikali itilie maanani, irudishe vitu chini ili mwananchi wa kawaida apate nguvu ya kuweza kufanya kazi naye.
Asante sana. Pengine tukuungana na mwingine kwa maoni yako, wewe kama Mkenya na mkazi wa Nakuru, unategemea nini katika bajeti ambayo itakuwa inasomwa leo?
Bajeti ya leo kulingana na mimi itaniumiza kiasi, sababu serikali inazidi tu kukopa. Sasa kukopa itazidi kuniumiza zaidi, sababu yangu kidogo yenye niko nayo ndio wanazidi kuchukua.
Ukisema serikali inazidi kukopa, finance bill ya mwaka huu imejikita kuweza kukusanya ushuru zaidi ili pengine ushuru huo uweze kumudu bajeti yetu. Unadhani ushuru huo utaweza kumudu bajeti yetu?
Kulingana na mimi uzuru itamudu bajeti yetu, sababu itafaidi tu serikali yenyewe, wale wakubwa. Sisi wadogo tutazidi kunyanyaswa.
Pengine matarajio yako ni gani, kipi kifanywe?
Matarajio yangu kitu kifanywa, waache kukopa na sisi tuendelee na maisha yetu. Asante kwa sasa.
Asante sana. Fred, those are some of the residents here in Nakuru town along Kenyatta Avenue who are up, na wanachokililia zaidi wanasema hii budget inafaa izingatie mwananchi, manake mwananchi amelemewa na mzigo ni mkubwa. But that is what they say here in Nakuru. Ours will be just to loiter around the city. Tutakuwa tunatafuta wafanyabiashara mbalimbali, mama mboga, bodaboda people. They will be giving us their views according and their expectations on this budget, which will be presented today later in the day by CPA Mbadi in the National Parliament. For now, I give it back to you. as we loiter in this town tukitafuta watu wengine zaidi.
Asante sana Mike Chalo from Nakuru. Beautiful to see Nakuru people up and early. That's my hometown. Yeah. And Mike Chalo anasema ati atazidi kuloiter around the town. All right, let's now still move within the Nakuru County and let's go to Naivasha where my colleague Willie Dennis Jiru is on standby. Willie Dennis, a very good morning. What are the people of Naivasha expecting from this year's budget?
Good morning very much. It is indeed a good day here, Freddie, and we are coming to you live from a famous joint known as Kwajambi. I know very well that you have been here before, and as you can see, we are well glued, tuned to TV47. I think they will be streaming this live, the events unfolding during this time and throughout the day, as we expect CS Mbadi to tell us what he expects to do with 4.9 trillion. And with me is a team here that works here in the famous Kwajambi, who endure everything to ensure that those truck drivers are moving along this corridor are well sorted when it comes to matters food. And as you can see, we have guests around here, and everybody is glued to TV47, and everybody is positive to what is going to be around the day. Perhaps I could just start with some of the people who serve as tea here. Nieleze jina lako na unatarajia nini siku ya leo kuhusiana na budget. Nakushikia microphone.
Jina langu naitwa Harriet Nasimiyu. Kuhusiana na mambo ya budget, I will ask the government at least to mobilize your mini budget as from 4.9 million trillion irudi chini kidogo juu sisi ni vijana na tunategemea hii kazi na hii mshahara yetu yenye tunapata hapa yazitutosha. Kwanza sisi tunaishi mbali kidogo na hapa, tunatumia transport. Sasa at least the government watusaidie sisi vijana ndo at least i-balance.
Nyumbani ni wapi?
Mimi naishi Kayole.
Nyumbani Shago.
Kwetu ni Bungoma County. Yeah.
Pia ni how much?
Kutoka hapa mpaka Bungoma County ni 1300. Yeah.
Imeongezwa ama ilikuwa hivyo?
Imeongezwa. Mwanzo tulikuwa tunaenda na 800, but sasa imeongezwa na 500.
Yeah. Kwa hivyo
waangalie hapo at least.
Asanti. Yeah. Wacha nipate kutoka kwa mwingine hapa. Nieleze jina lako, tuseme nini kuhusiana na budget ya mwaka huu.
Jina langu ni Grace. Mwenzangu ashasema mengi ambayo tunatarajia. Mengi ashayasema.
Tuseme nini kuhusiana na budget ya leo? Unatarajia nini? Wewe ni msichana mdogo tu.
Mimi natarajia wabadilishe, waangalie hayo.
Asante, wacha tusikie kutoka kwa mwingine hapa. Ndugu, nieleze jina lako na tutarajie nini leo kutoka kwa budget?
Kwa majina naitwa Spencer Oyugi. Hii budget design imesomwa haifurahishi sana. Si kama vijana tunaumia. Wakipandisha hivyo sana, makazi pia hatuna. Ndio maana maandamano zina happen, tunatokea na bado tunauliwa. So kama serikali ifanye hivi, itatafutie tu kazi. Si kama vijana bado hiyo budget ishukishwe kidogo.
Sasa tunahitaji taifa likue na litakuwa tu kwa budget ya juu. Sasa sijui ungependekeza mambo gani?
Budget tu ishukishwe tu hata kama ni kiasi. Hivyo tu.
Haya, wacha tusikie kutoka kwa mwingine hapa. Nieleze jina lako na tutarajie nini kwa budget kulingana na maoni yako.
Kwa majina anaitwa Brian Ndive. Mimi ni mfanyikazi hapa kwa Jambi Hotel. Kitu naweza sema hii budget ipunguzwe juu ukiangalia kama vijana tunanyanyaswa sana. Kama mimi nimekuja kufanya hapa kazi, tukaa help haijawahi toka. So unapata side nyingine hata wanafunzi wengi wenye wako under TVET ama wenye wako university wapati full scholarship ama ile kitu inaitwa help. So pia ikipanda hivyo pia itakuwa kazi ngumu kwetu na itatukalia sana haswa si vijana. So mapendekezo yangu ni ipunguzwe. Yeah.
Wacha tuelekee kwa wateja tusikie vile wanasema. Freddy, this place really serves people around, and maybe we could hear from a guest. Jambo, tuko mbashara TV 47. Najua wewe ni customer, sijui una mapendekezo gani kuhusiana na budget. What do you expect? You can begin with your name.
My name is Harry Tambe. I'm from Garissa County. I'm just here for an activity. We are happy to hear about the budget reading activity. And I'm from the agriculture sector, and we know the future of agriculture in the Asals. So we expect the budget to focus on agricultural development in the Asals, and also the red network that the president has been talking about in those areas, especially the road from Garissa to the Dab, and the one from Bisiolo to Mandera. We want those things to be given a lot of focus for them to be completed. Yes.
It has been said that there's too much that riches that is untapped from the northern part of this country. Perhaps what would you want to see allocated as first priority on that Asal area?
For me, is issues on commercialization of livestock. To see this has how the Asals can be developed in terms of water infrastructure development and development of the rangelands and feeds for the livestock in those areas. Yes. To move from subsistence farming to commercial farming.
Inadequacy of water has been a big impediment towards any agriculture development around there. Do you think what would be most viable, groundwater or sinking boreholes?
For me, I think, especially where I come from Garissa, there is a lot of potential in terms of water harvesting, both underground and on surface water. One priority area I will suggest is the issue of tapping into the permanent Tana River that passes through there, that covers about 400 kilometers of Garissa County, which has huge agricultural potential. Farmers suffer there from a lot of flooding all the time along that river. And there is good suggestions that have been done by engineers in terms of increasing the mega dams around that area to harvest water, to reduce the flooding along that river and reduce the suffering of the farmers, and also tap water during the flooding period to do agricultural activity both for crops and farming. Yeah.
How much would you wish, how much would be enough for that?
We have never seen in the northern region big mega projects. And this time we want to see at least one project, especially for water infrastructure, at least reaching even 1 billion shillings. Yes.
Thank you very much for your time. Ndugu, nieleze. Kule wanasema ni kukavu, sijui Uluyani wanasema nini? Anza kwa majina.
Kwa majina naitwa Anthony Masinde Omalwa. Mimi ni mkaaji wa mimi ni Muluya, mtu wa Western. Nikipenda kuchieleza machache. Kwa majina naitwa Anthony Masinde Omalwa. Maisha, by the way, maisha iko juu, na tungeomba serikali kienda kusoma budget tuangalie kama sisi wananchi wa kawaida, kwa sababu uchumi iko juu, hakuna kazi. Rais anajua mambo ya agriculture, angetuangalia upande wa agriculture, atusaidie upande ya mbolea, mashamba tuweze kulima, tukifisha kama tumeweza kulima, hata ungekuwa na njaa. Vijana wa Gen Z, angeangalia vijana wa Gen Z wakati anaenda kusoma budget, angalia vijana wa Gen Z our create jobs, kwa sababu akiwawekea kazi hata nao wanasema wamechoka kuandamana. Hatutaki vijana wetu waingie kwa maandamano na wapoteze uhai wao.
Kuna vitu ambavyo vimelengwa sana na wataalamu kwa siku za hivi majuzi. Wanasema kilimo ndio uti wa mgongo wa taifa la Kenya, na ikiwa tutekeza zaidi kwa kilimo, basi wananchi wataweza kushamiri zaidi. Lakini vijana hawataki kuingia shambani.
Vijana unajua sasa, vijana watafutie kama njia mbadala. Kama wataki kuingia shambani, wanaweza kutafutia kazi. Kama rais akiandika kwa barabara, akiweka vile anatengeneza miradi ya barabara, akiwapea kazi, itakuwa sawa. Yes.
Sawa. Nashukuru sana kwa muda wako. Sijui kama sijarudisha kwako Freddy, sijui kama niweze kuzungumza na dada mmoja. Ako sawa. They are okay.
All right, thank you so much, Willie Dennis Njiru, for that update from Naivasha, getting the views of members of the public in anticipation of the presentation of the budget statement later this afternoon by CS Treasury John Mbadi. Many Kenyans have a lot of expectations, but let's be honest, these things have already been discussed. Today will just be a summary. So if you've not been keeping abreast with the discussions around the budget estimates, today you will just get a summary of it, even as they continue dealing with the bills, resultant bills in the Houses of Parliament. This morning, to help us discuss matters budget, we'll be having CPA Joshua Kamwere, who's a council member at the Institute of Certified Public Accountants of Kenya. Bwana Kamwere, asante sana kwa kuja. He's a financial consultant. Karibu sana.
Thank you very much. Good morning to our viewers.
Yes, so we also have Wycliffe Bichanga, also a council member of the Institute of Certified Public Accountants. Karibu sana, Bwana Bichanga as well. These are the two gentlemen that will be engaging in this discussion. Some of the things we should expect, some of the trouble spots, or some of the risks that we are facing, even as we try to implement what has already been discussed and canvassed deeply and to a large extent by the National Assembly. Let's take a short break. TV47 Breakfast, our special coverage of the budget 2026-2027 will continue after the break.
You have my rent?
Leo jioni kama tutakuwa tumelipa rent, nauza hizi yako.
Hamna pesa. I just to make my nails today.
Sasa hivi natuhusu aje?
Can I order now? Do you ship? Can I get blinking ones?
Mimi nilikuwa na trade. Nimewekelea kitele yangu. Kitele yangu na trade. Ikakunyuma.
Oh my God. You left me.
Nitumie ni line. Uko nje kuna wifi.
Why? Hi-fi?
Wait, so what do we call this dish again?
I have no idea.
The cucumbers are there specifically for my beauty routine.
Tangulini kero umeka kwa beauty product.
Na ameenda.
Tunafaa tukuwe na logo yetu. Like, si ni brand already.
You won't entertain divas.
No. I'm not dealing with a man-child.
Amazing. Nishapenda hii energy.
Sundays at 8:30 p.m. on TV47. Saturday at 8:30 p.m.
My father used to tell me that our hotel is the home for travelers. I guess I forgot that. Recently, it's been more of a mirror of my own ambition. We might fail. We will probably fail, but not for a lack of trying. So for the last time, and the first time, welcome to Connect In, the best experience in Eastern Central Africa and its environs.
Saturday at 8:30.
All right, welcome back. TV47 Breakfast, our special coverage of the budget 2026-2027. We're anticipating the presentation of the budget statement this afternoon before the Joint Houses of Parliament at 3 p.m. by CS Treasury John Buddy. A quick look at the highlights. Total expenditure, 4.845 trillion shillings. Revenue, around 3.6 trillion. This is the money mostly collected by KRA and probably the grants anticipated. Fiscal deficit, the money that we don't have, 1.17 trillion shillings. Debt service, what we need to pay to service our debts, 1.5 trillion shillings, which is about a third or 31% thereabout of the total budget, 4.8 trillion shillings. Counties, meanwhile, will be getting 420 billion shillings, of course, plus additional transfers, which will get it to about 4.95 billion shillings, 420 billion in as far as equitable share is concerned. These are just some of what we'll be looking at with my panelists this morning. Once again, allow me to introduce the panelists. We do have with me this morning. Just a moment, and technology wants to fail me again, but it won't. So we do have CPA Joshua Kamwere, a financial consultant, also a member of ISPAC, and Wycliffe Bichanga, also a council member of ISPAC. Gentlemen, karibuni sana. Quite a number of questions. And of course, it's a sustainability question that everyone is concerned about. The kind of debt we have, the expected borrowing that we have, and the sustainability of this. Have we lost any hope of consolidation that this continually will have to be sustained through debt? Joshua.
I think from where the fiscal performance of the country is currently, we are unable to be able to meet the demands of the expenditure of 4.8 trillion. It's expected that as we try to grow revenue, because you see that we've been trying to collect as much as we can year on year. So this year we are targeting to collect 3.6 trillion. So as long as we continuously, gradually try to broaden the tax base, increase taxation where we can, we'll continue to have that aspect of borrowing until that point where we'll be able to meet our demands. And also it's a bit tricky because you realize that the expenditures at times we commit earlier than the time we get the funds. So you have to pay a contractor today, but you're expecting to collect revenue from KRA or from other government agencies at a later date. So that debt issue will always be there, but the question is, how long do we how long do we have these debts? Is it a short-term debt or long-term debt?
Yes.
That's a big question.
If you look at the plans for borrowing, because that we're already talking about it, there's the issue of securitization of some of the levies we have. The fuel levy has already been securitized. Bichanga. Now we are seeing, anticipating a securitization of something else, the housing levy. Are we okay with Bichanga? Okay, unfortunately, there's something that needs to be sorted out. So still to you, Bwana Kamwere.
Yes.
Are we getting deeper and deeper into debt? And this is long-term debt.
Currently, the government is trying to reduce the long-term debts, and that's what we are doing. The government is proposing on broadening the tax base. And that's why we've had many cries from, Kenyans saying that this sector was not taxed before, and now it's being demanded for taxation. And that's why some of the measures, for example, the e-TIMS compliance, where every business needs to be e-TIMS compliance, that's trying to broaden the tax base. So as long as we're able to broaden the tax base, so that because initially the people who are paying are the formal sector and formalized organizations. So you find that when there are new tax measures, it was only affecting, for example, the employed people, and people in informal sector were not in the tax net. So the government progressively wants to reduce the deficits on the budget and to reduce the borrowing, but we can only do this when we raise more revenue, and this raising of more revenue, we cannot continue milking the same cow, so we need to bring in more other people into the tax net. That's what the government is doing, and eventually we'll get there. But of course, the commitment of the government on public spending is very critical for us to be able to achieve those aspirations.
When we talk about government spending, you've seen the proposed budget by the United Alternative Government, who say that it is possible to reduce this budget by about 500 billion shillings. 500 billion actually, 500 billion shillings.
Yes, yes.
How practical is that? Or is it just because they know they don't have the burden of implementing this? Do you think it's possible to reduce this budget by that much?
It's possible to reduce the budget spending, because you realize, for example, yesterday the Controller of Budget released reports on how the spending has been done for the past 9 months of this financial year. And she mentioned about a lot of mismanagement of funds, where we will use a lot of money on catering, on domestic travel, international travel. Some of these expenditures we can be able to reduce, because as we speak now, we are seeing that every day our ministers and our, senior government officials are out of the city every weekend or every day, churning out money, having a lot of, delegations coming to their offices. Whereas we can still be effective as a government, but we don't have to spend as much. So yes, I do agree that we can still manage on the public expenditure, because the issue of this country is not the revenue that we generate from the citizen. The issue is on spending. That's why we keep on increasing the budget. For example, last year it was not at 4.8 trillion. So we keep on increasing because we want to accommodate extraneous spending. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Let's now bring in Bwana Wycliffe Bichanga into this conversation. Bichanga, there's been a lot of talk about government spending. And obviously, we look like we are a bit overzealous when we do a budget, 4.8 trillion shillings against a collection of about 3 trillion. With a huge deficit like that, do you anticipate that at some point we might be, it may be unable, the government may be unable to sustain this? Should we anticipate serious austerity measures if at all you continue this trajectory, but forced austerity?
Thank you, Fred. I want to agree with you that it is becoming unbearable because I think we've always had budget deficits year in, year out. And that is exactly why, if you look at our public debt, it has been growing. Because when you have a deficit, you have no option. You've got to go to the market and borrow. Currently, our borrowing is in the region of 12.8 trillion. So you can imagine what is going to happen in the next few years if we continue with this trajectory. And we've also seen that even after flexing our muscles, our collections are still very low compared to the estimates that we are getting. Then you realize that the logical thing to do is actually check on our expenditure. And for the longest time, I think as a country, we've had conversations on revenue collection. We hardly have conversations on the expenditure bit. There was talk of doing a zero-based budget, you know, where you go in, open up the budget figures, look at programs. So you say, if it is this particular ministry, what are the programs that you are going to run here? Allocate funds per program, per activity. But I think we've never really actualized it. We're still continuously looking at if it's the education sector, how much did we give them last year? Then the ministry will justify why they need more, add. And because no one will say that we now need less this year. They will forever want more and more and more. So for as long as we're just adding on to the previous budgets, our budgets will continue going up. For me as a citizen, the call is to actually do a zero-based budgeting, at least for one season, then we can continue from there. Because with the current trend, there is, it's common knowledge that the inefficiencies that have been built into the system for a long time. And that is why you see we now have 4.8, probably next year we'll be having 5 trillion. And our collection will still remain, because out of the 3.6 that we expect to collect, I think from taxes, ordinary revenue is 2.9. Again, let's also say that 2.9 is projected. If the business and the economy doesn't grow as expected, we may actually not collect that 2.9, meaning that our deficit may end up being higher than the 1.1. So I agree with you that we really, really have to rein on the expenditure bit. We've got to be very intentional on this.
Yes. In your own estimation, do you think that the window for self-imposed austerity measures is closing? That if at all we are to probably, in a whatever period we are to conduct any austerity, it will be forced? Not out of choice.
You see, I think, unfortunately, some of these things can only work depending on the tone from the top. And we really don't have to wait until we are forced to do it. We should be able to read the signs of the time. We should be able to say, if we continue this way, we're going to leave the country in a very bad shape, so that we are then able now to take deliberate actions. My brother here, CPA Kamwere, has just spoken about the report that was issued by the Controller of Budget yesterday, where she told us that we spent 200 billion, I think since January, in unplanned expenditure. Of particular interest, I think it was a 4.5 billion figure there for State House. In fact, she went further to say out of the 4.5, about 2.5 billion of that amount was spent within 6 weeks. So clearly, when we talk about the austerity measures, talking about the tone from the top, you realize that the tone is a little bit different. And until we're very deliberate, especially from those kind of offices, we still have a long way to go.
All right. But if you look at the papers, one of them talks about Ruto's elections budget. Probably that's a challenge, that you cannot talk about reduction in expenditure at this time when you're facing an election year. Do you see that, or the politics around how we run this country affecting the kind of expenditure we have? And do you feel like this will ever change in the near future?
It's quite a challenge, because we do expect that when head of state or politicians are going to seek for office, they should be able to fundraise. But it's for their campaign budget. But it's very difficult when someone is in office. They will try to put in programs which will make them, for example, traverse the entire country, whereas you ought not to have done that, because that aspect of using the budget to seek re-election, there's a very thin line between, am I addressing these constituents, for example, from a certain region, as the president or as head of state or as a candidate seeking re-election. So it's difficult, and of course we can't be able to separate that. We can't be able to separate between what are the initiatives, because as a politician, the initiatives you are going to take is to ensure that you are able to, you'll be re-elected. So of course that bit, it's in the budget. You can't be able to get away from it. Yeah.
All right, let's now look at the revenue strategy. You've talked about the progress that has been made in as far as trying to widen the tax base is concerned. But even in the recent past, even in this instance, we still do not see that working very well. What in your estimation is a failure by KRA and the measures that have been put in place so far?
I think for the longest past, we've not had those initiatives coming on board, because even the government would come and question as a body like ISPAC, can you give us, ways where we can try to broaden the tax base? But you're seeing now that coming into being, because now with e-teams, it's one of the key tools that if you're able to, harness the technology, we'll be able to collect a lot of taxes, because you realize, for example, 2 months ago, we had Kenyans complaining about, those messages from Shuru saying that you need to pay that. So as long as there is data integration, it's very much possible to be able to integrate or to broaden the tax base. The challenge then there lie in, for example, in e-teams compliance, you need internet. And across the country, not every region or area is covered with internet or even network. There are some people who have never seen a smartphone. So if, for example, someone is a camo trader in a remote place in Madeira and there is no internet, how do they then use these technology of e-teams? So there are measures which the government is doing. You've also seen that from the finance bill proposal that the commissioner they are seeking to have the commissioner of KRA given powers to be able to auto-populate your returns using the third-party data. So we are going to get there, and for sure we are going to broaden the tax base so that the form of employed people in the country are not the ones suffering year in, year out.
Yes, and it's interesting you mentioned a camel trader in Northeastern, because it would appear even these measures, which are largely dependent on technology, that the focus still is on urban centers. Even the Mitumba traders who are getting this, there was initially a proposal to have some tax, I think it was removed.
5%.
Yeah, but that is still the focus, that people within urban centers will always, or businesses within areas where technology is, will still pay more than the rest. Don't you think that that is a zero-sum option for them?
I slightly disagree with you, because I think it is normal that for any initiative to start, it has to start somewhere. The focus may be on the urban centers, but I think then gradually you will see that it's moving now to also bring in the other players, because the economy is not just built by a few people. Although the challenge that has already brought into the fore is, so you will tell this seller selling whatever wares they have in the urban center to issue an e-teams receipt. But this person then buys from that rural guy who probably has no idea how to raise that e-teams. What that does, it disadvantages this urban trader, because that urban trader also needs an e-teams for them to be able to be taxed on their profit, because ideally taxes are levied on your profit, not on your sales. But if you do not have that e-teams to be able to offset against your revenue, then you get taxed on your gross. So those have been the challenges. And personally, yes, I agree with my brother here about e-teams is a good initiative which will bring in people in the bracket, but I feel that the implementation phase is wrong. Because one, it needed to be well piloted, because as someone who is in the tax space, have been able to see the challenges, real-time challenges with this system. Now, we've been giving feedback to KRA, and then we've seen corrective action, but you could have imagined had they done proper piloting, then we could have achieved desired results better. We've seen the e-team space. Currently, I'll tell you that, and most tax practitioners will tell you, they're having trouble filing the returns because the system is not as responsive. As I've told you, we've been giving feedback, then a correction is done. We've been giving feedback, a correction is done. But you see, in the process, it is becoming inefficient, the process. So part of the things I will advise the Revenue Authority, even as we bring in measures, do proper piloting, give it time. At times there's no hurry in these things. Your citizens, your taxpayers will feel better if they are given time to comply with some of these things. Secondly, on that issue, it said that the Kenyan economy is largely informal. I think about 83% of the economy is informal. And it is then expected that push through e-teams is going to have them formalize. So we are trying to use taxation measures to formalize a sector that is that huge. In my opinion, that is not necessarily a very bright way of doing it. There should have been other better ways of pushing them. You know, think of incentives, think of how do we involve them in maybe financing so that you attract them, they come in voluntarily. You know, when you come in and you're telling them that this is how we're going to package a financing model, this is how we're going to package a contract or a tendering system that needs you to be able to supply, or even talk of a regime that recognizes that you've been in the informal sector, we're now introducing you. So you could, for example, say the initial years, the first 2-3 years of your business, your rates are probably lower than normal. To just attract these people, when people have come in voluntarily, I think you achieve more rather than when you are forcing them through.
Before the even introduction of the technology.
Absolutely.
All right. Let's consider some of the allocations now in this budget. Education, of course, the biggest, the highest, 781.4 billion shillings. That's the largest share, followed by national security, between 463 and 566 billion. Then health comes third at 175.5 billion. Infrastructure follows, housing, agriculture, which is said to be the backbone of this economy, 63 billion shillings. And this is largely what we're talking about, the informal sector as well. Yeah. Do you see a mismatch here, if at all you're trying to grow an economy and probably enhance GDP, when the allocations are this skewed? It would look like most of this is mostly recurrent.
It's surprising that the government should be focusing on what are the key economic growth drivers. And for example, when you mention on number 2 in terms of the allocation, that's defense. And you wonder whether, are we in war with any country? And why are we having that massive budget? Are we under attack or under risk? So as opposed to government now focusing on the key economic drivers which can be able to create jobs, create, be able to broaden the taxable amount that a business can be able to pay, making the, livelihood or cost of living to be lower. We don't see that focus. And again, when you mention about the 2 items on health and agriculture, as per the 2010 Constitution, those are some of the functions which are devolved So whatever is being allocated there actually is too high, if you were to ask me, because it's from national government, so they should be setting policies, research and all that. More money should be going to the county, because agriculture and health, for example, if it's level 4 and below, under county government, if it's the issues of agriculture is within the county government. So the government is still trying to hold some of these functions. They are not releasing, they have released the functions, but they have not released equivalent in terms of money to the counties. So what I was expecting to see is more allocation to the county, more than the 420 billion being allocated to, so that the counties can be able to fund the health and agriculture sector in the country. So there is mixed priorities, and more so is, you remember that some of the votes in the Ministry of Defense are like confidential votes. So what is that being used? For example, if you look on NIS in terms of the gradual increase of funds year in, year out for the past 5 years, it's enormous. So there is the priorities do not speak to the bottom, the better program that the head of state have been driving.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you realize, Vichanga, that Kenyans have been a bit too focused on the taxation measures, the finance bill, but very little attention is paid to the budget estimates themselves. Where is this money going to? These are things that Kenyans should have picked on. That when questions asked, why are we spending so much on security? Education probably we may understand, but it's still a huge allocation. And probably if used differently, it may work. If you compare with the alternative government, the budget they give, they say that, for example, that allocation for education could even fund free education. Do you think that, yes, some of this may look good on paper, we are spending big on education, but really not in the right way?
That's true, that our focus has always been on the revenue side, because I think that's what comes from your pocket directly. And that is where we miss the point. Because if we do not check on the expenditure, then the raid on your pocket will continue. That is guaranteed.
And it won't make sense.
It won't make sense. So if we looked at the expenditure as Kenyans and raised pertinent questions on that expenditure bit, maybe the raid on your pocket will stop. Because I think if you look at what has been happening for a number of years, our total expenditure has been going up. And for that reason, every finance bill has been trying to rein in more money. Yeah? And you know it doesn't have to be like that. It doesn't have to be that every finance bill has got to collect more. It could be that the tax laws that exist, whatever they are collecting still remains the same. However, government puts in policies to expand the economy so that under the current laws, you're still able now to collect much more from the economy, because the economy has expanded courtesy of the policies that the government is running. But I think because that has not been happening, our expenditure has also been going up. We never question. And I want to raise a particular concern with those allocations. And you've correctly put it, that education seems to be having the lion's share. I think that has been very consistent every year, and it has gone up. I know that we've been speaking about a new funding model for the university education, where now families are also involved in contributing. We know that capitation in high schools has been happening, but again, families have got to share that bit, the fees you share as a family. We do not have free education yet. We know that the free primary education has been there, but still it has its own challenges. So we will expect that with all these resources, we're having an efficient education model and system for the country. You will agree with me that these days there are very few people who have their children in public primary schools. And this is not because they enjoy. The private schools are quite expensive, but it's because the primary education is inefficient in the public sector. I will expect with these kind of resources that we will actually be very intentional again to achieve efficiency in that sector. Because now it is time for us to ask, how is this money really spent in that area? Secondly, you've seen the allocation to security. You will notice that that is a 50% increase from last year. And to me, that is shocking. but again, not surprising, considering that this is an election year. I do not think they are going to employ more security officers, but again, as Joshua said, some of the vote heads in that sector are confidential. So we then expect, your guess is as good as mine on how that money is going to be spent, especially in this election year. The allocation in agriculture has gone down. I agree that agriculture is devolved, but again, I still believe that the national government has got intentional programs that it could run. But again, probably at this point, it is not a priority because we're looking into an election, and maybe the expenditure in agriculture may not be favoring the powers that be.
Yeah, but you look at the focus here, and youth SMEs and social protection, probably because many younger Kenyans would expect a focus on job creation, probably. But we see a lot of handouts from government, and I don't know, how do you see that from a finance perspective? Handouts, how effective are they in job creation? You give someone 50,000 or 22,000, does it necessarily probably boost entrepreneurship? Or is it just another way of spending?
I think on that aspect of job creation, the government mostly is focused on not creating formal employment because there are no those opportunities in the economy. And those funding of those packs, it's creating more people into the informal sector net because, for example, someone having a capital startup of 50,000, you don't expect them to employ more than, say, 3 people. So it's you know, what you're doing is to make you continue living, you're just surviving. It's just to make you survive for a certain period of time. Because then on these, for example, programs like Nyota, we've not seen, after you're given the 22,000, then you're giving the other 25,000. What are the gradual, where do you go from there? So we don't have frameworks where we have that you'll join on this radar, we'll fund you up to 50,000. Then from this point, you'll be able to grow and access some of these funds. Because when you look on the success stories we have on youth fund or women fund, in most cases, they've been going to elites. Not the ordinary mwananchi in the rural village, in my village, which will be able to access such kind of funding because you need to know someone. The structures are not in place in terms of to ensure that we bring as many people. We do not capacity build these people. Whoever we are giving them handouts, you are not capacity building them. So they might not be able even how to manage their profit, or how do I price my products, or how do I price my time. So that's losing meaning in a way, because you'll find that, for example, in aspects of where the government maybe want to bring youth into agriculture, and they have subsidized fertilizer subsidy, we have an allocation of about 18 billion. But in most of the times, you find that even by the time you're planting, this fertilizer is not available. So meaning that whatever nutrients you needed your crop to have, it won't be able to have it on time because there were delays. The same thing we talk about capitation. Yes, we know that you are supposed to issue funds to the schools, but you'll find even textbooks coming up to 3rd term. Even you go a whole year without, we keep on changing the syllabuses. So you find that by the time the syllabus is reviewed, the printing is done, almost 2 terms are gone. You are just remaining 1 term. So 1 term for you to be able to complete your one academic year. So the stipends we are giving to young Kenyans, they are not sufficient.
Yes.
Exactly.
And that's a question we're asking, because some of these allocations in our budgets, do we feel that probably they're misplaced? Would it be better if at all there was a consolidation of some of these funds to boost manufacturing or industry, or to offer reliefs for people who can open such, and in that sense return probably formal employment, or even casual employment to a huge extent, as opposed to handouts that are being given to the youth?
That's true, Fred. You see, the culture of populism, unfortunately, is well rooted in the country. So some of those handouts are meant to increase popularity of the giver, unfortunately. And that is where now we lose it. Are we able to do long-term plans and do long-term projects? I'll tell you, it is a shame that we, after these many years of independence, 63 years later, we at times have to import food to eat. And yet Kenya is a big country. We have arable land across the country. You drive to some places, you realize that it's a huge tract of land just seated there. Probably because there's no water, because that area doesn't rain, we believe it's not productive. Is it time that we invested those funds into productive areas? How are we able to turn that land into productive land, fertile land? Are we able to ensure that we have proper irrigation schemes? And all these young people will then get jobs there, they will earn a living. Are we able to seriously think about manufacturing so that we stop importing some of the things we import into this country? You will notice that when you look at the statistics, that manufacturing has been going down as a percentage of the GDP. I think currently we stand about 6.7% of our GDP. That is the contribution that manufacturing sector gives to the economy. There's a time we were at 9%, so we've been going down. Unfortunately, no one seems to care about that. So I agree with you that it is time to consolidate these funds, do meaningful projects that are able to make Kenyans get jobs and earn a living.
But perhaps that is in tandem with the government policy, bottom-up economic transformation agenda. From your standpoint, from a finance standpoint, how does this is a better plan still sustainable? If at all by now many have identified the gaps, some of them professionals like yourself, do you think it's still sustainable to continue that plan that probably pushes towards grants and handouts?
Currently, it's not sustainable in terms of the cost of living aspect, because what the government has done on this better program is to ensure that we are making the country attractive from macroeconomics, but when you come to microeconomics, we don't have money in the pocket. And you know, even on the better program which the government came with, they say bottom up, pesa mfukoni, but you don't have money in the pocket, because from what we have now, the government is one of the biggest customer of the economy. And we have about, national government owes suppliers about 700 billion, counties owe suppliers about another 200 billion. So we are talking about close to 1 trillion. It's owned to enterprises within the country. So meaning that if this money is paid out, then we will be able to stimulate the economy. So in terms of the priorities, for example, when you say that we are building markets in every county, and you'll hear, you know, senior government officials saying that we'll have market in this place, another market in this place. But it's market to sell what? Because if you're not subsidizing agriculture, if people don't have money in their pocket, they cannot be able to use those facilities that you're building, Apple, you know, county agricultural irrigation, aggregation parks. So it means that the priorities are wrong, because we need to focus on how do we ensure that the common Kenyan citizen have money in their pocket so that they can be able to spend. But you're not stimulating that, because if you're saying that out of the national government spending and counties, maybe about 3.3 trillion, and we are saying that 1 trillion is owed to the suppliers currently. So it means that, you know, business entrepreneurs who supply government continue to suffer. And what we need to focus in, what will put money in people's pocket. And that's why we need to focus on each and every locality in the country, what can they produce and what is fit for them. Because on these county irrigation aggregation parks, we've not had any public participation. When you hear that head of state or the deputy president goes to a locality and says that we'll have a market in a certain location, where was the public participation done for the communities to say that this is what we need?
Market we need.
Yeah, exactly. So it's an issue of handout.
And many questions about budgeted handouts and whether or not it can be effective in an economy like ours. But even as we continue talking about this, and we'll get to the issue of debt, let's get some feedback. Ano Dida, what are people saying about their expectations?
All right, let's sample some feedback from our socials. TV47 Kenya on Facebook and on YouTube. And next is TV47 Digital. You can also tag us so that we can sample your feedback and the cost of this broadcast. CPA Joshua mentioned something about Youth and Women Fund, and we'll start from that particular point. Faith from Kisii says, I hope the budget allocates more money to women and youth empowerment programs so that people can start businesses and become self-reliant. I don't know how we should do this. Should we give you a chance to respond, Kamari, to that, what you think with regards to that particular comment from Faith, that she hopes that this time the budget will allocate more money to women and youth empowerment. Just hold on to that. You will be able to respond to that as once we are done with the feedback. David from Machakos says, we don't want more taxes. Kenyans are already carrying a heavy burden and need relief, not additional levies. Anne is watching from Meru and she says the budget should focus on agriculture. Farmers need affordable fertilizer, better markets and support to increase production. We have Joseph watching from Kakamega, and he has a question to the guests. Kenya's debt remains a concern. How can the government manage the debt burden without overtaxing citizens? And Peter is watching from Eldoret. He says, as a small business owner, I would like to ask the guests whether there will be any relief measures for SMEs in today's budget. And finally, Brian from Kisumu says, youth unemployment is a major challenge. What should the government do differently in this budget to create jobs? These are just some of the feedback and contributions that we're getting from Kenyans this morning. I wonder if Bichanga and CPA, you have noted these questions and concerns down. Yes. Where do you want to start from? Whose feedback? Is it from the youth and women's comment? Or is it from the youth unemployment, which is a major challenge? And of course, the question on what the government should do differently in this year's budget. Joshua.
So thank you for you who have asked the issue of the, the funds that the government is allocating. Yes, we do have allocation of women fund, about 8.8 billion. So it's an increase of about 300 million from last year. So you've seen some gradual increase from last year. Youth Enterprises Fund has been allocated about 300 billion. So again, a slight increase from last year. And we also have the Nyota program now being allocated about 4.2 billion in this year budget. So the big question is, how have these funds been effective in ensuring that, we are creating entrepreneurs and, they are creating jobs? What has been the impact of these funds? Because again, even when we have these allocations year in, year out, what is the default rate? Are all people paying, or you just go there and get money and it's not paid? But in terms of this budget, yes, the allocation is there. I think the concern then would be from these organizations to be able to track and capacity build, so that if you're given, for example, a loan of 100,000, then they support you so that your business grows and you can be able to, have a revenue of, say, 200,000 in a span of time, so that we see you growing from a micro enterprises to a medium enterprises and to a large corporation, which will be able to create jobs for the citizen of this country. Yeah.
All right. And what Abichanga's on the same question, you could tell from the feedback that people now have come to the point where they expect this money will come to them, that they expect to be handed money. He raises the issue of repayment, the Hustler Fund. We know the story about the Hustler Fund. It means that many Kenyans are looking at these provisions or allocations as pure consumption. Bring the money, we eat. And it's now an expectation. What does that say about us?
True. The Hustler Fund story is classic in this country, that people expected to be given money by their fellow hustler so that they can be able to also feel good. Unfortunately,
with no intention of starting any business.
Absolutely. Now, I think we need to do a lot of education, especially now with the Youth Fund. To me, I strongly believe the Youth Fund, the Women Enterprise Fund, those were very good initiatives, but they did not achieve the desired objective. But I believe all is not lost with proper education for us to know. So you're not, if you are a youth, you're not just going to take money because you are a youth. You're going to take money because you are a youth who has an idea that you think is viable, so that people also appreciate that there are processes. Do our people know that there is a feasibility study that you need to do before you start a business? That's some of the education that we need to know. Do these people know that before you start a business, you need to understand how to run a business, how to manage it? It's not just buying and selling. It's not about just having the idea. There's a lot that goes in the in the back room that you need to be aware of. People need to understand how the taxation regime works even before they start a business. But if you just pick guys and say you belong to this age group or you belong to this gender, then you qualify for this. I think that is where we lose it, and that is why you've seen repayment has not been happening. And unfortunately, we do not think there have been consequences for those ones who have defaulted, because that's how we encourage bad behavior. If you do not attach consequences to this, then you do not expect compliance going forward.
Yeah, and by adding more allocation to the same, how do you expect it to work? All right. Let's talk about the debt issue as well, because now that's a big story. And this, according to these allocations, about 1.5 trillion shillings goes straight towards debt servicing. How sustainable is that? And have we been caught up in that cycle where we just have to borrow more for us to service the debt, not even for anything else? That for us to be able to service the debt, we have no option but to borrow more. They say if you want to get out of the hole, stop digging further. Joshua.
For the allocation of 1.5 trillion currently in 2026-2027 budget, we don't have a choice, because those are commitments which are already there. We need to pay the debt, be it external debts, domestic debts, and also pension to the pensioners. So that's it's non-negotiable, because if we don't allocate the 1.5 trillion, it means then we'll be defaulting, and it means that we won't be able to borrow outside the country. And if you look on what now we are proposing from the deficit that we are having of about 1.2 trillion, the government is seeing a risk that our rating is not good internationally, and we cannot be able to attract more funding from bilateral and multilateral lenders. And out of the 1.2 trillion, they are focusing that 1 trillion will be borrowed from the domestic market and 200 billion externally. So that means that for the businesses, the banks and the financial institutions will find it easy for them to lend to the government. It means there will be less flow of money to the entrepreneurs, MSMEs, and corporations in terms of access to credit. So we don't have a choice. We have to allocate the 1.5 trillion. We'll still continue borrowing as it is now. And as long as we do not meet the revenue targets, for example, what the council member here, Bichanga, mentioned, that KRA is projected to collect 2.9 trillion. This year, the year which is ending in the next few weeks, the allocation was about 2.7 trillion. And we are wondering, will about 2.92. But we are wondering, will KRA be able to meet their target? So if they don't meet their target, and then we're also having an incremental.
Between now and the end of this month?
Yes, between now and the end of between 1st April and the end of June, we are supposed to collect about 900 billion. So there are chances that KRA might not be able to meet the target of which was set. And on the back of that, considering that they didn't meet this year target, we're also increasing their target for next financial year. So if they don't meet that target, the deficit then grows from 1.2. And also remember, when we prepare this budget, towards the 6 to about 10 months from July, we'll have something called supplementary budget, which a lot of Kenyans, or we don't have a time to be able to contribute and to challenge that expenditure which comes. So this is not the final budget of 4.8 trillion. We'll have some other supplementary budget coming in because there are some new issues. We have the elections, maybe had funded IEBC and all that.
What does that say about our planning? Because some of these things, like the last, what do you call it, supplementary budget, increased the budget by about half a trillion shillings.
Exactly.
From 4.3 trillion to almost 4.7. And you wonder, some of these things are so big. Someone should have thought about it when they were initially working on the budget. What does that say about our planning?
I think our planning is in order. We know that, for example, 4.8 trillion will not be enough to sustain the economy. But if we were to say that we want to have a budget of 4.9 trillion, Kenyans will make a lot of noise. So we know, yeah. So of course, we know this. We'll still have a supplementary budget. That's for sure. But because we know that Kenyans are going to complain a lot, we know I need 5 or 4.9 trillion. I just give you 4.7, 4.8 now. Then 9 months down the line, I'll come with a supplementary budget, and it will pass very easily.
Yes. That element of secrecy, what does it say about any administration, that even some of this debt that is borrowed, people don't know exactly what it's going into. Then you try and hide a few things from Kenyans. Are we that gullible when it comes to budget making processes that we do not question anything? It's only the taxes that we question.
I think we spoke about it where we said that for the longest time we've been focusing on revenue because that's what hits your pocket. Now, by and by, I believe that Kenyans are coming to the realization that the expenditure bit is the most important part. You will see that the problem is that there are ways of beating the system. There are ways of avoiding transparency. For example, when you know that they are confidential vote heads. And I told you that it's not a surprise that that area which has got confidential vote heads has got a massive increase. I think it is the one that has the highest increase year by year. So as you open your eyes further, we've got to find ways of then packaging this, unfortunately. But I just wanted to add on the issue of the debt. The government goes ahead to borrow 1 trillion domestically, and I agree with Joshua that what that means, it stifles the businesses in the country, because you and me are not able to borrow because we're competing with government. You can imagine when government goes to the market to borrow 1 trillion, the commercial banks will be willing to lend to government because they perceive them as risk-free, whereas they perceive you as very risky. Now, we are expected as the private sector to drive this economy. But with which funds? Because other people will save, other people will borrow, but in this case is other people will save, government will borrow. You stifle the economy, and that growth to the economy then is it may not happen. And the ripple effect will also come to the taxation bit, because if the economy is not growing, you do not expect to collect more. So it is, at the end of the day, it is a zero-sum game. So to avoid digging further, as you did say, is to take care of our expenditure. If we reduce our expenditure, we'll reduce our borrowing, we will then be able to deal with that debt crisis. You will notice that we've grown from a debt of 7.8 trillion in the last 3 years to 12.8 trillion. That speaks volumes. And these are numbers that I think as Kenyans we must be very concerned with.
All right. I want us to talk about this new word. And I think this administration has become very creative when it comes to accessing financing. Securitization. And I saw an attempt by this government to say, or to even convince Kenyans that this is not borrowing, these are not loans. We're just securitizing some of the funds we have. But the World Bank and the IMF called them out and said, this adds to your loan portfolio. So now the proposal is to securitize the housing levy. We've already securitized the fuel levy. What exactly does this mean? And isn't this more borrowing?
Yeah, it is borrowing. It's actually more borrowing, but what is happening is we are giving it, it's like when you go and say that I have 200 shillings, can you give me 1,000? Because, for example, when you go to financial sector, say like SACCOs, you will contribute 200,000 and you can borrow 1 million. So that's what we're doing. It's only that out of the debt we are having, we are saying that I have this FAD, I'm committing another, because the debts we take, for example, currently on multilateral and bilateral debts, we peg that on our revenue collections from Kenya Revenue Authority majorly. But now on the side now we are saying that I have this FAD, I'm housing levy from my employees across the country. So, and I know that every year I collect 1 billion, for example. Can you pay me 5 billion? Because if they continue contributing, I'll pay you. So it's still a debt. It's only that there is a security into it. Okay. But you find that that is not part of what is, you know, we are saying that is the Kenyan country debt is about 12.7 trillion. It won't appear on that point.
Allow me to ask Big Chan the same question. Doesn't it attract interest, or this is just projecting your collections and getting money from that?
Definitely, any borrowing will attract interest. It attracts interest.
So securitization of these funds will still attract interest?
The money lent is, there's an interest element attached to it. So when you actually look at what they're doing, the total cost is the money lent plus now the interest element. That is finally what will be paid. So it attracts interest, and I agree with you, it is actually borrowing. It's only that it is off the books. And the creativity continues, because also remember, there is a discussion on the PPPs projects. There is the infrastructure fund that is coming up. You will actually notice that on the budget allocations, on the infrastructure, the budget seems to be uniform. There's no increase from last year. It is just a standard figure. But we know that there are infrastructure projects that have been taken to be funded by the infrastructure fund. So that says that our budget is actually much bigger than the 4.8.
What is the potential risk of such creativity? Because I know there's that infrastructure fund, which probably that's a reason why in the budget, the budget for infrastructure is not going up. What is the potential risk of this creativity? If we may call it creativity.
Yes. Now, on securitization in the first place, question is what happens if the levies don't come in as expected, for example. You then stand a default risk, which is normal, because if the economy doesn't work well, for example, let's talk of the housing levy. Housing levy is levied on salaried employees. What happens if we no longer have enough jobs in the country and people are no longer in the payroll? Then you see your collections going down. Now, you owe some people money, but at the same time, that money is not in your books. But you have an obligation. I think, to me, the risk in the country is then much bigger, because you are not able to explain what exactly is the situation. You are not able to deal with the lenders, so to speak. On the infrastructure fund, it is expected that the private sector will take this up. That when we now have the infrastructure fund set up properly, we have money, we know that the government is selling assets to put money in there. But the bigger portion is expected to come from the private sector. So the private sector will be happy to invest if they are certain of getting a return. What happens if the money is not enough? It then means that the projects are not able to run to the end. If the project has not run to the end, you are not likely to earn a return. So you have a disgruntled private sector which has invested in a public infrastructure project, but they are not able to take out their money. And remember that they may have borrowed this money for them to invest here. So the cycle in the economy becomes dire.
All right. You mentioned that you actually refer to this as off the books. What exactly does that mean? Does it mean that it's not subject to this budgetary process that we're talking about?
Absolutely. When we talk of a debt of 12.8, those
away from what we are talking about in the budget.
Those figures are not there. Yeah.
What impact would that have, that we have this parallel loans away from what we know through the budget?
We run if the revenues don't come through, then we run a risk of defaulting on these facilities. So that's the risk, that the company, the country is unable to borrow from the formal structures. It's like me, I have gone and utilized all the bank facilities, and no bank can be able to lend me more. So I'll go to my friends and I borrow from them. Remember, the income is the same income. So what you're doing is running a risk of default if these revenues don't come through.
And then when that fails, this repayment will just come back to the budget making process, so our debts here goes up. It
will still be a side debt, but you are defaulting on that side debt. For example, SGR loan is not part of the 12.8 trillion because that facility was given to Kenya Railways. So that debt is not part of what you are mentioning about 12.8 trillion. What you are mentioning about 12.8 trillion is what the government has borrowed as the national government of Kenya. But we have corporations who have borrowed about 1.2 trillion. Your likes of Kenya Airways, KenGen, Kenya Power, Kenya Railways. We still have a other line of debt.
Which we don't talk about.
Which we don't talk about on the 12.8 because that budget of SGR falls under the budget of Kenya Railways. The loans that KenGen has falls under their budget of KenGen as an entity. So actually the total debt that the country owes, it's way too much higher than 12.8.
But is the repayment or the servicing included in this 1.5?
No, it's not. No,
it's not.
No, that will be on the various corporates.
Wow.
And the county governments, yes.
Wow. Doesn't that also now serve in making this process ambiguous? That as we scrutinize the budget-making process, how much scrutiny can we give to such kind of borrowing outside this budget-making process?
Because today's process, it's on the national government. We are not discussing a budget of a parastatal or of a county. So since this is the national budget, we are discussing about whatever the child's or the children's of the national government have, we are not discussing. Yes. That's part of the departmental committees of parliament to question those entities. Why is your borrowing this high? Because what the government does is to guarantee. So the government is saying, me, I'm just a guarantor. But this 1.2 trillion is borrowed by entities and county government, but the national government is the guarantor. So in case the person you've guaranteed has not paid, that loan you as a guarantor, then it will come as part of the budget, national government at some point. Yes.
When it comes to the level of scrutiny, of course, the Parliament has had and held several hearings across the country. Formerly, there were about 16 or 18 places that people were at. But you as ISPAC, have you taken part in that? Were you invited to take part in this process, especially on the budget estimates? Bichanga?
Yes, we've been involved. We've been involved through the process. We have given our submissions to the Committee of Finance Planning Committee, led by Honorable Kimani Kuria. We expect that our views will be taken into account. We've seen previously where we give suggestions, where some suggestions are picked up, some are not. We can only wait and see what the feedback that we're then able to get.
In your own assessment, is this government open to advice from elsewhere in as far as budget making is concerned?
To be fair, there are areas that we felt that they have listened. There are areas that they've been able to take up suggestions given, but also there are areas that you look at it and see that their mind is made. They proceed as they believe. So to me, it has been some bit of 50-50.
So in as far as public participation, you're confident at least it does make sense beyond just being a formality?
The answer is...
Especially on the estimates.
The answer is yes and no. Yes, it does in some areas, and no in some other areas, because as what the council member have just mentioned, we have some predetermined decisions or outcome by the government. So whether you are going to complain or not, we won't budge even a cent. But there are some other areas where people will be able to give suggestions and they incorporate them on the final paper. So the Departmental Committee on Finance, yes, it does take the initiative from the public participation. But what we are lacking is, should we be able to have a tracker and say that all these people from these counties raised these issues when we went out, and these are the issues they raised, say 100 issues, and we are able to take certain other issues. Because you realize at some point, there are public participation whereby issues will be accepted, other issues will be declined, but there are other issues, they are perceived that they came from public participation, but the public participant in this case is the government. So they say that we went out and said, and people said XYZ. For example, if you look on housing levy, everybody in the country said, remember, first it was supposed you save and you're supposed to get a refund at some point. It's like an investment. Then Kenyans say they don't want this. And when the government came back, they said some other Kenyans said, let it be a levy. But if you scan across all the media houses and say, who said that we wanted to be a levy? No one said it. So at times it works, it doesn't work, and at other times it's forced issues which are brought, and we are told that perceived they came from public participant, but it's the government itself doing it. So we can say that it's fruitful, but is it really efficient the way we would like it? No.
All right. Let's get some more views and feedback from members of the public who are watching us in this discussion, following this discussion. Over to you, Anne.
All right. I want now to cross over to Naivasha, to Joto. Naivasha wanasema vipi? Willie, Dennis, Jury, good morning once again. We heard you earlier on when we were starting the show, but how's the situation there? What are their expectations? Wale ambao wameamka as at now? Willie? Willie Dennis Njiru, ama bado pia wewe haujaamka?
Session here live from Naivasha CBD, where we had a very heated debate with the locals here before they left to the flower farms. But we've just been left with a newspaper vendor here and a boda gentleman here. They are going to be telling us in a nutshell what the colleagues who have just left to the flower farms have to say. Ndugu, nieleze jina lako, tunatarajia nini leo kutoka kwa budget ile ya leo?
Mimi ya kwanza Kiswahili sijui kuongea sana.
Nieleze tu
kwa Kikuyu.
Kiswahili tu hata kama kidogo.
Kiswahili kwa budget. Kwa budget tunaweza tamani watu kugusia hii gharama ya mafuta kwanza waangalie sana. Juu mafuta inachukua kila kitu nchi. Sasa tupugusia kwanza sana na diesel. Irudi penye ilikuwa na petroli irudi penye ilikuwa, tunaweza furahia sana kwa hao. Hayo.
Wewe unatumia petroli kila siku. Umeongezea wale ambao ni wateja wako fare na wanasema nini?
Kwa wateja wangu siwezi kuongezea fare. Juu sasa ukiongezea mteja fare, kujua hata yeye amepigwa kama vile tumepigwa. Sasa hapo ndipo tunaulizana tutawafanyia aje? Juu ukiona mimi nikipigwa wewe umepigwa. Nitaweza aje ukuja kuongezea wewe fare?
So mafuta irudi chini.
Mafuta irudi tu chini. Hiyo ndio tunahitaji.
Unangependekeza irudishwe chini kwa kiwango gani?
Ya kawaida tu ile irudi mpaka hiyo 0%.
Awali ilikuwa 170 something.
Ilikuwa 176.
So ulikuwa unabakisha kitu?
176 kwa bakisha kitu kidogo, lakini saa hii wamekula yote.
Hakuna kitu.
Hakuna kitu nabaki.
Haya, wacha tusikie kutoka kwa mwingine. Ndugu, nieleze jina lako. Naona unachapa kazi. Angalia huko, angalia huko, angalia huko.
Kwa majina mimi naitwa Michael Wainaina. Ni mkaaji wa Naivasha. Miaka mingi sana. Sasa tukiangazia mambo ya hii budget ya leo. Mimi budget naona iko sawa sababu tangu niwe mkubwa, budget ijaiteremka, inapanda juu, kila mwaka inapanda juu. Na kama ni mafuta mimi nianza kutumia mafuta ikiwa shilingi 48.
Ulianza kutumia ikiwa 48.
So serikali inakuja inapandisha, na mwingine anachukulia hapa inaendelea tu. Sababu maisha irudi chini. Sababu za nikikuja hii town shilingi 5, shilingi 1 ilikuwa na value. Mafuta ya 5 nilikuwa nanunua kwa lita 1, nilikuwa nanunua shilingi 10. So uko na 100 unafanya budget na pesa inabaki. Na unaenda sherehe. Saa hii 1000 hata sherehe hakuna. Lakini tunazoea tu. Bora uhai na tuwe na uchumi mzuri na kusiwe na vita yote kwa katika nchi.
Nimeona umeanza kutumia petroli kitambo kidogo. Na ningekuuliza hivi. Unahudumu pia katika taxi. Wale ambao ni wateja wako, wamefeel ile bei ya juu ya gharama ya maisha.
Sasa ukivinywa na unafinyana, hiyo si tafadhali. Manake ukiangalia mafuta yamepanda. Saa hii mafuta ni 200, karibu ya 240 na imepanda. So hata yeye anakubali. Wengine wanakataa, lakini unamuelezea, hata inabidi naye anakubali. Hatapokuwa sasa hiyo kazi ni ngumu. Kazi imerudi chini sana sababu ukiangalia mishahara wa watu wengi haijaongezeka, lakini matumizi imeongezeka.
Katika mataifa yale ambayo yameendelea, kuna bei ya kila kitu iko juu, lakini pia mishahara iko juu. Ndio Wakenya wengi wanatorokea Kenya, wanaenda kuishi katika mataifa ya kigeni. Ungependa labda hilo lifanyiwe kwa wale ambao ni wafanyikazi?
Shida hapa tuna Kenya, kazi inaenda vice versa. wenye wanafanya kazi ngumu mshahara duni, wenye wanafanya kazi rahisi mshahara kubwa. Ukiangalia wengi mambo nyenye wako katika maofisi, ukiangalia magari inapita na dereva na mtu mmoja na ni gazla, wengine wana pikipiki wana miguu, mshahara ni kidogo. Ukiangalia kwa ofisi wanafanya siku 2 ama siku 3 kwa wiki, wengine wanafanya karibu siku 7 ama 6, kuanzia saa 2 mpaka saa 11 mpaka saa 12, na mshahara ni kidogo. So nikiangalia kama iende vice versa, baada ukiangalia kama nchi za ughaibuni, wenye wafanya kazi ngumu ndio wanapata mshahara kubwa, wenye wafanya kazi rahisi wanapata pesa kidogo. Hapa kwetu vice versa.
Naam, asante sana kwa mapendekezo yako. Ndugu, labda tumalizie na wewe. Nieleze jina lako na utueleze maoni yako kuhusiana na swala ambalo linaendelea leo, kusomwa kwa bajeti.
Kwa majina naitwa Bernard Mkabana.
Pandisha kofia kidogo.
Kwa majina naitwa Bernard Nanjo Mkabana. Mimi ni fundi wa mbao. Kuhusu mambo na swala la bajeti, mimi ningeomba mambo haswa upande wa uchumi wetu umesoroteka. Ningeomba upande wa mafuta iweze kupunguzwa, ndio at least vitu tuweze kupunguzwa kwa bei, tuweze kujidumu kimaisha, kwa sababu maisha imekuwa ngumu. Hata jinsi ya kusurvive, kulipa manyumba imekuwa shida kubwa sana. Chakula imekuwa bei ghali, hata kufanya kazi imekuwa shida. Sasa ni kusurvive tu katika hii nchi yetu.
Labda kwa wale ambao unatolea huduma yako ya kazi ya useremala ama hiyo kazi ya mbao, umeongeza bei?
Inakuwa vigumu kwa sababu hata mteja wako mwenyewe hana pesa ya kulipa hizo vitu ambazo unaitwa. Hata ukiongeza bei itabidi akutoroke ama akose. Hata ukiongeza leba anakutoroka, anaacha kupima hizo vitu. Kwa sababu sasa mwenyewe hana pesa hata ya kulipa hizo vitu.
Yeah,
inakuwa vigumu sana.
Kwa hivyo tutarajia nini kutoka kwa waziri Badi saa 8:30 hivi?
Mimi ningeomba Badi aweze kuangalia maslahi ya mwananchi, aweze kupunguza haswa upande wa budget, upande wa mafuta aweze kupunguza. Na pia hii mambo ya safari, naona kila saa rais ameenda nje ya nje, anatumia pesa mingi, mara unasikia bunge sijui umetumia pesa ngapi. Aweze kupunguza hiyo budget, at least pesa iweze kuja kwa mwananchi wa kawaida.
Yeah, ni sawa. Ninashukuru sana kwa wakati wenu. Freddy, umeweza kupata hapo kutoka kwa wakazi wa hapa Naivasha. He said, wakati umesema ulikuwa unanunua petroli pesa ngapi?
Shilingi 48
lita moja.
Mwaka 2003
2003.
Yeah.
Petroli.
Nilikuwa
nanunua mafuta ya taa kwa sababu wakati huo mimi ni mafuta tu ya taa. Shilingi 27.5, yani 27 shillings and 50 cents. Najaza kibuyu cha lita 5 na kilikuwa kinanisukuma kwa sababu siku hizo nilikuwa peke yangu. Mambo ni mengi tu hapa Freddy. We'll be keeping watch on the developments around here Naivasha and what people have to say ahead of the budget reading that is about 2:30 p.m. this afternoon at the August House. And before I hand it back to you, the 495 billion shillings expected to go to the counties. They have allowed, the locals here have lauded the move, saying that it will harness service delivery and development around the counties. Back to you in our studios, Fred Indimuli.
All right, Willie Dennis Njiro, ni mimi ndio niko and your Dida. Thank you so much for that robust coverage with Wananchi there. But back here in Nairobi, it's all systems go. As you can see on your screen, that's Treasury CS Mbadi on his way to Treasury, but he's taking a look at what we wrote about him this morning. Tumeongea mambo mingi, and I can see that's the Business Daily. Hapo ambapo ameambiwa it's a tightrope sort of. That was People Daily this morning, calling it Mbadi's new dilemma in funding 4.8 trillion shillings budget. Is it really a dilemma for him? Mnaonaje hapo venye yuko kwa screen? He's making his way to Treasury. Then later on at around 2:30, 3 p.m. or even earlier 2 p.m. thereabout, he'll be making his way to Parliament with the famous briefcase ile tunajua. Remember, Parliament will be barricaded, yes, to protect this year's agenda na budget Parliament. Mike Kagwongo is there with the CS in this car, and anamfuata Dikule, and then we'll get to hear from him what he has to say as far as the budget is concerned. and if at all he'll be able to address what you as Kenyans are saying this morning with regard to the budget appropriations this morning. But I want us to cross over to Parliament now, where Hibak Said is on standby. And Hibak, good morning. How's the situation in the mood in Parliament? What do you have in store for us this morning? Hibak.
All right. This morning is going to be a very interesting morning. We're already parked here at the National, Parliament, ready to tell you what exactly is going to be done, especially knowing that this is one of the highest budgets that have ever been read. 4.8 trillion shillings is the number we're working with, from 4.2 trillion shillings last year. Of course, the Treasury Cabinet Secretary John Mbadi is going to come and dissect those numbers, knowing full well that we have diverted from the estimates of last year by about 100 billion shillings. This knowing full well that the government is supposed to have, fiscal discipline. So we're waiting to see how those numbers are going to turn out. We want to see who are the biggest winners, who are going to be the quote-unquote losers, and what do those numbers represent. Odida, if there's anything maybe that you want clarification on.
All right, Hibak, as at now, really nothing. I think we can just sit back and wait. You'll be having a conversation later on with KSS Member of Parliament, Julius Ruto. I'm just concerned to know, what would you love for him to address this morning as far as the 4.82 trillion budget is concerned? Because you're saying this is, the highest from 4.2 trillion. And then looking at also the supplementary budget, how it increased from 4.2 to around 4.7 trillion shillings. Then what do you expect that Ruto would address, Julius Ruto?
Right. Julius Ruto is a certified public accountant, which is very important in this scenario because he is going to tell us how exactly this budget was made and what was some of the decisions that had been made that came to this number. We do know that the opposition, the official opposition, did come up with an alternative budget of about 4.3 trillion shillings, saying that their revenue is going to be around 3.7 trillion shillings, saying that the common mwananchi is not going to be hurt by this particular budget. Why exactly did the national government not take, some of these measures or some of these numbers, knowing full well that once again, the Kenya Kwanza government has been rooting on fiscal discipline? It's not very fiscally disciplined to, bloat your budget to 4.8 trillion, but that's what we want to know exactly. Those numbers, do they make sense? Are they going to be feasible? Some of the deficits are as high as 1 trillion Kenyan shillings, even more. What does that mean for the common mwananchi? How exactly is revenue going to be collected?
All right, thank you so much, Hibak. And of course, we'll be linking up with you later on once you are ready with the Member of Parliament for KSS, just to also really understand if at all this is favorable for the Kenyan mwananchi. And that's also a conversation we'll be having here in studio with business people, entrepreneurs, and stakeholders in this industry to really understand if at all they resonate with this budget, 4.82 trillion shillings. Hibak, I hope I have released you now. Once again, on your screen, on the other side of your screen, that is CS Mbadi. That is Karen Road. He's making his way to Treasury. Yep, still taking a look at the day list this morning. And later on, we'll expect for him to address the press before, of course, making his way to Parliament to table this budget. A historic budget, 4.82 trillion shillings. Remember, we are tabling it across East Africa, Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda. Sitaki kuangalia mambo ya jirani, how theirs is lower than ours, but ours is, of course, the highest in the region. So we'll be just looking at how that allocation has been done across various sectors. In education, which is the highest, followed by security, and then roads coming in third, and then we also have health coming in fourth. Just to read the numbers, if you allow me, the health is having an allocation of 170 million shillings. Roads is at number 3 at 230 million shillings, and then at number 2 is security at 566 million shillings, and of course education is at 668 million shillings. That is the highest allocation in the 4.82 trillion budget this year. We have Mike Chalu on standby with the people of Nakuru this morning. Mike, good morning once again. Now it's me and you. Tuambie, watu wa Nakuru wanasema vipi? When we were linking up with you earlier, you said hawako wameamka vizuri, but I'm hoping now they are up and about and ready to go. Mike?
Yeah, thank you Ann. Umesema ni mimi na wewe, na mimi hapa pia niko na watu wa bodaboda. Remember it's a budget ambayo imesemekana itakuwa ni budget ya Mkenya mdogo, Mkenya wa kawaida, ni kumuinua yule wa chini kwenda juu. As we said all earlier, ni bottom up. And I have the bodaboda guys, they're gonna tell me maybe what are some of their expectations on this budget. Tukianza na wewe, ukianza na majina yako, tuambie pengine unatarajia nini katika bajeti hii ya leo?
Kwa majina naitwa Waihenya Wadhuku na mimi ni mkaaji hapa Nakuru. Mwanzo siwezi sema kwamba nina matarajio mengi katika hii serikali ama katika hii bajeti ya mwaka huu, kwa sababu bajeti zingine zimedhihirisha hii serikali wakati ilikuwa inaingia katika ushukani ama ilikuwa inaomba kura, ilisema ya kwamba ni ya mwananchi ule wa bodaboda kama sisi na ule mama mboga na wale watu wa chini na wa mkokoteni na hao kama vile walivyosema. Na ningetaka kusema ya kwamba hao wakiingia kwa serikali walikuwa ya kwamba wameshtumu serikali ambayo ilikuwepo, ambapo William ndiye alikuwa naibu wa rais wakati ule, na akapea watu matarajio makuu sana ya kwamba akiingia maisha yatakuwa mazuri. Lakini tangia aanze mpaka wakati huu maisha yameendelea kupanda kila uchao. Kwa hivyo wakati huu hatuna matumaini makubwa sana. Ukiangalia katika sekta kama yetu ambayo ni ya bodaboda, mafuta ya petroli wakati huu yameenda mpaka shilingi 200 na kwa hivyo na ilitoka shilingi 150 yeye akiingia. Kwa hivyo sidhani hata saa hii ni kama hawana nia nzuri ama hawana mpangilio mzuri ambao ni wa kuinua huyo mwananchi ambaye walisema ya kwamba
road maintenance levy ilipunguzwa kwa shilingi 1 na senti 50. Tunatarajia pengine endapo basi bei mpya za mafuta zitakuwa zinatoka, mafuta yatakuwa yanapungua, manake road maintenance levy ni mojawapo tu wa vitu ambavyo huwa vinadetermine ile bei ya mafuta. Kwa hiyo mafuta yatapungua, ni bajeti tu ambayo inatarajia kumpunguzia mzigo mwananchi. Kwa maoni yako, sekta ya elimu na sekta ya afya ni baadhi ya sekta ambazo zimepewa nafasi kubwa katika bajeti hii. Unadhani elimu hapa nchini itakuwa inanyooka na sekta ya afya pia?
Hayo pia ni mambo mengine ambayo yamekuwa changamoto sana kwa mwananchi wa kawaida. Kwa sababu ukiguzia mambo kwanza ya elimu, hata saa hii ni asubuhi ukienda hapa utaona wale watoto wamelala hapa. Miaka imepita hapa hakukuwa na watoto. Wakati wa Matiang'i na Magoha hawakukuwa na watoto ambao wanazurura mitaani. Ni kama maisha yamekuwa magumu hata kwa wazazi, upande wa elimu hata wazazi wameshindwa kumudu kuwapeleka watoto shuleni. Angalia hata saa hii watoto saa hii wako nyumbani, mashule kadhaa yamefungwa, lakini ukiangalia serikali vile ambavyo inachukulia jambo hilo, inalichukulia tu ni kama kimzaha ati ya kwamba ni watoto tu wachache ambao wameenda. Huyo hata mtoto mmoja kukosa kusoma ni hasara kubwa katika nchi. Na hii Singapore ambao tunasema tunaenda, ni Singapore gani? Ni Singapore ambayo wagonjwa wanaenda hapa hospitali wanakosa matibabu, ambapo jana niliona hata hao wenyewe wamesema, sijui ni PS wa nini jana alisema ati ya kwamba yale hospitali yatakuwa yakipatikana ati anaambia mgonjwa aende anunue dawa ati atakuwa akichukuliwa hatua. Tumefika hapo sababu ya uongozi mbaya na sababu ya hii serikali wale ambao wanaishauri ni kama watu pia wanataka kuchangia ianguke kabisa. Na hii serikali mahali imefika ni kama haiwezi nusuru sasa. Amesoleka.
Kutoka kwa mwingine, kwa maoni yako pengine unatarajia nini kutoka kwa bajeti ambayo itakuwa inasomwa leo? Ni vitu gani ambao unatarajia viweze kuangaziwa zaidi?
Kwa majina
informed by
I think many of these people who are commenting have not looked at the details of the budget to just determine what has cost the budget to go to 4.8 trillion. If you look at the budget, you'll realize that the one line that has the highest increase is the line that we call CFS, or Consolidated Fund Services.
Correct.
CFS is basically debt repayment and pensions, and these are figures or numbers that you cannot change.
Correct.
Because if debts become payable, you'll have to pay them.
Correct.
And if pensions become payable, you'll have to pay them.
And
you know, we have been operating a pension system which is not contributory. So it is the government paying for pension. So you will find that pension payment, CFS payment has increased from 1.36 to 1.501 trillion. So that is the heaviest increase in the budget. It's not even the recurrent expenditure some people want to believe. But now let me talk about zero-based budgeting. Remember, we indicated last year that this year will be the first year for implementation of the zero-based budgeting.
Correct.
And we exactly implemented that. But you see, for us to actualize full potential of zero-based budgeting, it will take about 3 years. So this is the first year of implementation. There are still challenges, but I am happy that largely we prepared our budget based on zero-based budgeting, where every expenditure was justified before being captured. And that is why you will see, for example, in certain state departments like energy, we have reduced the budget for energy significantly to now only 35 billion. Why? Because we realized out of this engagement that a lot of projects that are being funded through that state department are commercially viable projects that can easily be implemented outside the normal budgeting process. And that is why we have taken them out and planning to support or finance those projects through the National Infrastructure Fund and PPP models. So we have largely prepared this budget on the basis of justification of every expenditure, as opposed to what has previously been the case of incremental budget. But I wouldn't say it is perfect, because this is the first year of implementation. There is already a tool that we have that we gave to state departments and various MDAs to use, and that tool has been used, but it is still under being tested and refined. So in the next financial year, it will be better. And the third financial year, it should be perfect. So that is where we are as of now.
Okay. Great. The reason why I was asking about the adoption of zero-based budgeting is because you have also been a proponent of doing away with supplementary budgets. And we have seen that in the last financial year, you've only had one supplementary budget. Do you foresee a time when we will not have any supplementary budgets, given the size of the budget, particularly in this 2026-2027 financial year?
Yes, I've actually been a proponent of proper planning. And I've said before that the problem that we have in our budgeting process is that we are not linking plans to budgets. And that is why in my speech today, you will hear a lot of emphasis on planning and what we intend to do and introduce the planning bill. Remember, in this country, we have laws governing public finance management. We have laws governing procurement. We have laws guiding or guiding on asset management. But we don't have any law on national planning. And so that is a law that we are going to introduce this year, so that we can have proper plans. Because again, if you don't plan well, then you cannot have a good budget and even a good financial plan. Now, that is one thing that we are going to do. But I want to just point out that last year, if you noticed, we tried as much as possible to capture most of the expenditure and align the budget to reality. And that is why, if were it not for some disruptions that we have seen, especially the war in the Middle East and a bit of underperformance of KRA, we were literally not going to have, there was going to be no need really for supplementary budget. But we've done one supplementary budget. We may bring a second one, but the second one we are bringing is just to align donor-funded projects, and not really to put more expenditure into the supplementary budget. But that is one first step. In this financial year, I am looking at a budget that if we have to do supplementary budget should be one. Okay. But I project that we may do a supplementary budget because this war is very difficult to assess as at now. And if the war is going to continue, then we may be forced to again reassess our expenditure to align it to the realities and the revenue collection. Right. But going forward, and in the event that there is no disturbance and there is no emergency like flooding, like drought or anything of that nature, we should have only one budget.
Only one budget.
In the event we have some disruptions or shocks, whether internal or external, then obviously supplementary budget may be necessary. But I'm looking at a situation where this country, we in the next 2 or so years, in the event there is no disruption, we should not have any supplementary budget at all. Okay. Because that is the ideal. That is where we should go. Okay. That is what good planning is all about.
All right, fair point. Let's now handle the elephant in the room, Bwana CS. 1.01 trillion in deficit. How do we plan to plug this? And why I ask this question is because our revenue raising measures are not optimal. One, KRA has been making quite some good progress around that, digitization, reaching out to Kenyans, a lot more tax amnesty programs we have seen coming up, especially from the previous finance bills that have been passed, finance acts I must mention. But what's the catch? How are we going to raise this 1.01 trillion Kenyan shillings, given that we are also exceeding our runway as far as foreign or international debt is concerned?
Yeah, actually it is 1.1 trillion, 1.11 trillion. That is the deficit that is being proposed or projected. Yes, there is still opportunities under revenue collection and domestic revenue mobilization because we still believe and we know that KRA is not performing optimally. Remember, there was a period of time when we were collecting about 18% of GDP as ordinary revenue. Now it has come down to just, slightly over 14%. That means clearly either A, we are not efficient in tax collections, or two, the businesses have moved from the normal tax regime. We must devise strategies of now collecting taxes from businesses which have maybe moved more informal or more digital. And that is why you see us talking about broadening the tax base to bring in people who have actually literally are supposed to pay tax and they're not paying taxes. But you see, the problem again in this country is when now you try to bring those people in and there is a lot of noise, and the noise comes from people who are not those other those actually it comes from people who are actually paying their taxes. But there are people who are not paying taxes and they try to cushion them, and I think that is wrong. We need to allow broadening of the tax base, bring everyone who is supposed to pay taxes. There should be no excuse or at all, because those of us, you and I, who are on payroll, we pay taxes. Correct. And we have no choice. We cannot even, there's no discussion. Correct. But there are people who also make even probably more decent income than what you make actually go scot-free. And that is one thing that we need to avoid. So we are working around that space. Looking at the finance bill today, you will see a lot of reforms in that line. And again, also, we are doing a lot in terms of administrative measures at the KRA to make sure that it becomes more efficient. But now, coming to your question about how do we plug this deficit, obviously, deficit can only be financed through two things, because that is the deficit after grants. You can only finance it through, actually, you finance deficit through one thing, that's borrowing. But the borrowing can be both domestic and external. Correct. External borrowing is not very certain. Correct. Now, first, Kenya has moved to a level where getting concessional loans from the multilaterals is becoming not easy, because they're looking at Kenya as a big economy. Yeah. We are not a struggling economy, so to speak. So the multilaterals are there, but they are not as that space is not so open to us, because they're saying we have the capacity now to go and get our funding through commercial borrowing. Now, the commercial borrowing, looking at the environment today, is not a very good option.
The macros are not.
The macros are not good globally. You know, when you have an environment with high inflation, an environment with the economic disruptions, supply chain disruptions and shocks, obviously people will be asking for more to give you money. The investors are asking for more. So you'll find that the rates are now not very, very appealing and very attractive. So now what you are left with is also to come domestic. Now coming to domestic also has its challenges. One, you are crowding out the private sector. Two, the interest rates will start rising. So we are balancing these two. And that is why you can see for external borrowing, we have only projected about 116 billion. And the rest is from domestic borrowing. But there are some negotiations that we are carrying out. I will tell you, we are a bit lucky that our discussion with the World Bank is progressing well. If that happens, then we'll reduce the domestic borrowing.
Great. CSA is little runway to go for external debt particularly, but we'll be engaging him shortly a lot more to discuss this. And of course, we'll get into the finance bill later on. Back to you, Eric, Mariam, and Philari.
All right, that's Cabinet Secretary John Mbadi, CPA. Of course, my colleague Mike Kagwongo is in the same car, bringing us up to speed with what the CS has to say as regards the 4.82 trillion shillings. Mnaambiwa msome hiyo budget kwanza, ndio mkuwe na opinion kadha wa kadha. But Brenda Muthoni will be joining us also to give us a link just right now. She will be traversing the streets of Nairobi. Atuambia wa Kenya wa Nairobi anasema VP what their expectations are and what they're looking forward to. She also has Wangari Muthoni on standby, and they will be speaking to a lot of Kenyans just to try and understand if they really do understand how significant this day is. As far as spending is concerned. Brenda Muthoni and Faith Wangari, how are you this morning? Mkoaji?
Good morning to you, Annie Odida, and we are coming to you live from the CBD here in the heart of Nairobi. And today the roaming reporter is not alone. I am with my partner in crime and fellow colleague Faith Wangari. Amesema leo siku ambayo bajeti ya 4.8 trillion inasomwa, lazima asimame ahesabike. Good morning, Faith Wangari.
Good morning, Muthoni. And yes, today, since this is the biggest budget that will be read so far, I have to lazima nihesabike na nielewe pia kama Wakenya wenzetu pia wanaelewa budget. Sana I want to understand if they actually know the difference between the finance bill and the budget, which is what we'll be actually asking some of this bunge wenye wako hapa nyuma yetu watuambie wanaelewa between the budget and the finance bill. What does the budget entail as well?
All right. And Faith Wangari, wacha nikwambie, hii budget ya huu mwaka, one of the things zenye zimekuwa prioritized is the education sector and police reforms. They are going to be receiving the lion's share. Lakini kwa sababu leo Wangari ni mgeni wetu leo bunge la mwananchi, I'm gonna hand over the mic to you. Nikupe chance uwa interview tuelewe where their mind coordinates are when it comes to the 2026-2027 budget. Over to you, my dear.
Absolutely. I hope I make you proud. Thank you so much. Labda usimame hapa mwenzangu, tuambie utaanza tuambie majina yako, alafu tuambie. One of the curious things that I'm very curious to understand, if do you know the difference between the budget and the finance bill?
Yes. Kwa jina yangu naitwa George.
Takushikia.
George.
Takushikia.
George Omondi from Nairobi County, natoka Dagoretti South. Yes.
Unaelewa difference ya budget na finance bill?
Nitaelewa kidogo kulingana vile kuna vile ninaelewa, sio sana. Yes. So budget finance bill ni ile plan ile ambayo serikali imetuletea kwamba tutakuwa tunakubaliana naye vile wanatarajia kwa finance kwa kuendesha ya budget yao. Tukikuwa tumekubaliana naye, itakuja ni kama wataiweka ni kama ile sheria ambayo itawa guide kwa kuendesha hiyo, kuimplement hiyo budget yao. Yes.
Unajua finance bill nayo ni nini haswa, mbona inakuja before the budget as well?
Hiyo inakuwa ni ya kwamba inaletwa ili watu wapate kuelewa ya kwamba ni nini, kitu gani kile wameweka ndani ya hiyo bajeti, ndio diposa wakati wanaenda kuisoma kila mtu aelewe, wakubaliane ya kwamba iko sawa, ama kila mtu atoe maoni yake kabla ijafika kwa third reading mahali ambayo inapitishwa.
Very nice, very nice. Thank you so much. I hope you'll get more of that information as well. Please kuja hapa mwenzangu na utuambie majina yako yote mawili kamili. Ukiangalia kamera yangu pale na utuambie. So one of the sectors that is actually two sectors that are getting the lion's share is the education and the police reform. Maoni yako ni yepi kwa hayo? Are those sectors that actually deserve it? Are they actually also implementing to you directly as well?
Okay, kwa majina yangu ni Joseph Kimeu, natokea upande wa Embakasi South, na mimi mkaaji wa Pipeline. Swali yako umeuliza kwamba sekta ambayo imepewa pesa mingi ama kiwango mingi ya pesa education and police force. Ni kweli tunakubaliana nayo. Ile shida iko, tunasema kwamba hii pesa hata kama inawekwa kwa education sector, we are not seeing the value of that money, because wakati inawekwa mahali pale tunaona kwamba still kuna shida mingi katika hali ya education. Right now we are seeing crisis in education. Tunaona kwamba classroom, shule mingi za Kenya hakuna classroom. Watoto wengi wanasomea kwa mandi walls classroom, wengine wasomea chini ya miti, na kwingine unaona kwamba shule zingine hasina walimu wa kutosha. Hatunashindwa hizi pesa wakati zinawekwa pale, zinatengewa katika hiyo hali ya education. Are we seeing the value of that money? Ama pesa nyingine inaingia kwa mifuko ya watu. Hiyo ni area ambapo kama inapaswa kuangalia sana. Na kitu kingine ni kusema kwamba lazima education sector ifanyiwe marekebisho in periodic times. Kama wakati wa kitabu tulikuwa naona kwamba kulikuwa na director of inspectorate ya kuangalia vile masomo iko, kama shule ziko. Siku hizi hatuoni inspector of schools, hatuoni. Kitabu kulikuwa na inspector of schools. Hizi to see inspector of schools wakitembelea shule wanaona kwamba walimu wanakuwa sawa, vile shule zinasoma, how the schools are performing. Siku hizi hakuna inspector of schools. So tunataka government iangalie that area, na hii pesa anapoweka mahali pale wajue inatumikaje. Have been being utilized well, ama basically na chini ya maji.
So allow me to interrupt kidogo Kimeu, because whatever you're saying, unasema so far education hatuoni kama imekuwa ikimplementiwa, but also the government probably imeona hizi gaps zenye ziko kwa government, na ndio maana imesema education deserves this amount of money. Ndio all these worries that we have as Kenyans zikuwe catered for. What do you think?
It's a good proposal. To me I support. Hata hivyo naweza omba pia hata hiyo pesa iongezewe kiasi, because education, unajua when you are leading the country, vitu tatu ni muhimu sana: education, health sector na infrastructure. Three people na agriculture. So education carries most of the some of the money. So hiyo
Right, thank you so much. That is Faith Wangari speaking to Kenyans, bunge la wananchi hapo Nairobi CBD, just trying to analyze if they do understand the difference between finance bill and the budget, and how important these two are in today's events. Right, well, the budget appropriations will be tabled before Parliament today by the Treasury Cabinet Secretary. Lakini in studio, we still have our guest. Fred is in Studio A. Fred, you can take it away.
Right, thank you, Anne. And yes, I'm still in studio with Wycliffe Bichanga and CPA Joshua Kamwere, who are both members, council members of the Institute of Certified Public Accountants of Kenya, ISPAC. And they're trying to share with us their wisdom and knowledge in as far as budgeting is concerned. So the description, gentlemen, that this could be Ruto's election budget. We've had other years where we're talking about a growth budget. How does this differ from a growth budget, Joshua?
So there are two aspects on this budget. Yeah, politicians or the majority of the Kenyans might say that is head of state re-election budget, and for sure, yes, because he has to ensure that people have money in their pocket. And two, there is a economic growth part of it. And that's why we realize that some of the allocations which the president has given or what the government is proposing, for example, we've been having women fund at 350 billion, for example, last year. We've moved it to 8.8 billion. So you may tend to wonder why that very exponential increase from 350 billion to 350 million to 8.8 billion. Whereas you compare whether it's Nyota Fund is from 3.6 billion to 4.2, and Youth Fund is almost the same. So it means that the government is more focused with women and not youth. So in terms of the voting pattern, they might see that maybe there is a shift, and that's why there is no more focus on youth and very exponential focus on women. So the other areas where in terms of agriculture, so it's both. It's a delicate balance, and especially being a the-election budget, then we expect also the Minister of Finance to ensure that they reduce the pay rates, which they had proposed earlier, but we cannot see it anywhere on the bill. So if they really want to be re-elected next year by the former workforce, of course, we expect also to get some goodies from that aspect as well.
But we talked about this earlier, that this handout economy is not necessarily a growth economy. Do you get the difference? Because most of the description here is it's an election budget, or probably a re-election budget.
We also did speak about the need to be popular. I think it's a balance that anyone keen to go into an election has got to think through. That what are these aspects that I need to probably beef up before I go to the election? What am I going to tell the electorate when I get there? It also speaks to the nature of our engagements as a country. I think as a country we are more on short-term rather than long-term thinking. So the short-term effects seem to earn marks to the leader coming to be re-elected, and unfortunately, at times there are no ways to get out of it. We have seen what those allocations on the youth fund, the women fund, and I think we're going to see this particular year, we're going to see talk on those areas being amplified more, because we know that that is what speaks to the hearts of the electorate. My appeal to the citizens is that to continuously look at the long-term effect of projects rather than the short-term focus.
Take you back to an issue that we've been talking about, and that's the securitization. I don't know why I keep circling back to that. We've had pronouncements by some luminaries in the United Alternative Government saying that once we come to power, we'll get rid of the housing levy. And but now that there's a plan to securitize it, how possible will that be? Have we locked ourselves in a situation where we have to stay with the housing levy longer?
In terms of the securitization of the housing levy fund, yes, we have locked ourselves. And I think for opposition candidates, opposition wing of our citizenry, there are some things which are enticing to the citizens' ear. But when you get to government, if you find that there are commitments made, you cannot be able to, it's not a plug and play where you can just say that I'm stopping it. Because you find that there are very many commitments. We also had the same promises by the current head of state, where in terms of fuel, saying why is the fuel more expensive here and cheaper in other countries within the region. But when you get in there, there are some other things you can't be able just to move by a click of a button to be able to remove certain things. There are some suppliers who are already constructing these affordable housing, and they have contracts. So are you saying that you won't pay them? So there are some things which are enticing, but when you get there, it's not easy to change some of these things. So we'll continue on that trend.
There's something Bwana Joshua mentioned earlier, and that's the pending bills. More and more, even as the years go by, we get that this amount continues growing. Now I think we are above 1 trillion shillings. And we do not see any direct intervention in subsequent budgets towards remedying that situation. Do you think that this is a problem that could impact us in a negative way as we continue?
It is affecting in a big way, because when the private sector is stifled of cash flow, you expect a challenge, a million of challenges. And we're also talking about this when even, I think if you did see the clip by the CS, he did admit that with the forecast borrowing from the domestic market, we're going to stifle the private sector. We're also going to see interest rates go up. So that situation, coupled with the fact that government is not paying their suppliers, it's a big problem. And also remember that they are the same people that have not been paid by government who are now forced to actually go borrow. And because government is borrowing, they are borrowing at a higher rate. So you can then see how the magnitude of the problem. I could expect, especially this being an election year, the focus to be putting money in the pockets of Mwananchi and paying supplies one way of actually ensuring that there is cash flow around. But maybe, ideally what should happen is that if it's in the education sector, that budget, then once the money is allocated, priority should be settling on pending bills. That is the law. That should be the first charge. But we know that these pending bills have been around for a very long time. We even had a committee to verify the pending bills. I'm told they actually completed the assignment. We are hoping we will see payments happening in this budget. We know it has not been happening, but we're optimistic that it will happen.
Failure of that happening anytime soon, what does it mean for this economy? Even in terms of the election, if at all it's an election budget.
It means that the cost of living is going to be high, and we can't be, because as long as there is no cash flow movement within the economy, means people are not spending. And since government is the major customer of enterprises in Kenya and they are not paying, it means that there is no money circulating in the economy. So the microeconomics is going to be very tight. Yeah.
Is that a reality from your perspective at ISPAC? That because many people down here complain that hey, this first half of this financial year has been really tough. Even the second half has been even tougher because many people are not getting paid for services they've offered, and there's no cash flow. Is it a reality or is it just a perception? Probably. And is there a way that through this budget that can be remedied?
It's a reality. What the citizens are concerned about is true. You've seen that the cost of living in terms of inflation has been going up, especially now that we have this war thing in our corridors. So the cost of fuel being high, it means that the cost of everything almost goes high. So you've seen that, for example, last month we closed the inflation rate at about 5.6. There was in 2024, in November, December, we were at 2.7. So it can tell you that almost the cost of living it's increasing. So that's a concern that Kenyans have, and it's a concern which we'll continue to have. We've just had the CS Treasury saying that with the war currently ongoing, we don't know. He cannot promise that we won't have a supplementary budget. So it means we might have more spending. And that more spending does not mean that we'll be able to cushion our citizens in terms of, do we bring the cost of living down? So it's a wait and see, and things are going to be tough.
Yeah. On that question of the cost of living, Bwana Bichanga, we've had this for quite a while. Even the previous administration had the same pressures, and they worked on subsidies, especially on fuel prices. This has to be budgeted. Or probably do we anticipate that if things will get really bad, the government may be forced to go back to subsidies, and should that be the reason why we anticipate a supplementary budget?
Indeed, whenever you have got subsidies, then if the money is not in the budget, it has to come from somewhere. We have seen a few interventions to look at the cost of living. Remember that last month there was a change over the VAT rate for fuel to just cushion Kenyans from the rising prices of fuel. The adjustment was done to go to 8% instead of the normal 16% on fuel products. That is one way of cushioning. So usually those are called tax expenditures because government is forfeiting 8% or per liter, 8% yes, from the VAT bit. That's just reducing the price so as to curb the cost of living. And this is also because we know that fuel affects almost all sectors, because we've got to be transported. When you go look at the manufacturing sector, fuel is used. So that, we hope that that has cushioned. In other words, we are saying it could have been worse than it is right now. Now, with that going up, the fuel prices going up, the cost of living it becomes higher in other areas. So when you are looking at even things like fertilizer, you may see prices going up because the fuel prices have gone up. And I think that is where we come in terms of with the government then give in subsidies. But I think in fertilizer it has been subsidized for a while now. We may need elsewhere, but again, that goes back to increasing the expenditure that we're talking about. The best way to deal with the cost of living, in my view, is to be able to make the public earn more. And remember what we said earlier, that are we taking measures that are growing the purchasing power of the citizen? Remember when he spoke about, are we then able to do more farming, utilize the land that is lying bare? Are we able to bring in integration schemes? Are we able to look at manufacturing? So I think when we finally get the courage to deal with areas that affect the money to Mwananchi's pocket, then we shall have gotten it. Otherwise, I think it will be a big struggle, as we can see.
And as we get closer and closer towards the end of this interview, there's the issue of counties. And one of those highly contentious issues is how much money is going to the counties. This time around, Equitable share 420 billion shillings, which is probably way higher than what we've seen previously. But there are still complaints about even the capacity of these counties to spend this money. Many people are saying a lot of these things, including agriculture, because it's a devolved function, counties are not doing enough. It is one thing to push for more allocation to counties, but are we getting value for that money?
In terms of the county government, because now it means that we have 47 county governments, the onus is on each executive, the governor and his team, to ensure that they are delivering to the people as per their manifesto when they were being voted into the office. So you realize that there are some counties where the citizens are okay, they are happy about it, about the development happening or the support they are getting. Then you find that in some other counties we have complaints. When you talk about the pending bills in the counties, about 200 billion. That's what the pending, about 183 or thereabout billion in terms of pending bills. But the allocation to the county will be 420 billion. So it means half of that, if you are to pay all the suppliers that you owe, then you will remain with about 250 billion. Is that enough to run the counties? Absolutely no. So the onus is on each government to ensure that each county government to ensure that they are working efficiently, because even when you talk about 185 billion, it's not all counties have huge pending bills. But you go to the county, like for example, Nairobi City has a pending bill of close to 90 billion out of the 185 billion. So some other counties, they have very minimal pending bills. So it's the management, it's the mismanagement of public resources in counties and the level of corruption in various counties that is affecting the delivery of services to the common Mwananchi. Yeah.
All right. We earlier mentioned the allocation to State House. I can see from the alternative budget by the luminaries of the alternative government that State House is one of those allocations that they would cut down on. At a time like this, when we are spending a lot more, you've seen the number of state lodges coming up. You saw one in Wajir, and we understand another one in Meru. Last year's budgets for State House alone doubled through a supplementary budget from about 8 billion to 17 billion shillings. The CS mentioned something about planning as well, that we have a problem, a serious problem in planning. Despite the fact that we may want to cover these things from the public eye, don't you think it's more prudent to talk about all these things at this point?
It is definitely the time to speak about these things. I am happy the CS knows we have a planning problem. I think it will be interesting to see how we're able to walk the talk, because I think we've always known that our planning is not the best. And even when we plan, we never follow the plan to the latter. And if you ask me, that is our biggest undoing, that Plan, yes, but do you have the intention to actually follow through the plan? The supplementary budget is one good way to actually show that our planning is always wanting. When you look at the expenditure, and I think status will be one of those areas that the supplementary budget always tops up. That is why I did say that some of these things are possible when there is the right tone at the top on particular areas, when it is prioritized at that level. So the question is, how do we then expect the other areas to plan better if we're not able to plan at that level correctly?
All right. And for a final question, this is a question I keep asking very many people within the Kenyan context. We saw the level of comprehension about the budget-making process, especially around the finance bill in 2024, that's 2 years ago. We've complained about the fact that people are not paying enough attention to the budget estimates themselves. But do you feel like Kenyans have slowed down on discussions around budget making in comparison to what we saw in 2024? We saw even people go on social media, break down into vernacular some of the provisions of the finance bill. What happened to that discussion? I don't know if you ever engage in such discussions at your level at ISPAC.
The concern for Kenyans, and especially why now we are more focused even on handouts, is because over time we've had promises by our leaders and senior government officials, and those promises have not been fulfilled. So it's becoming an exercise in futility, whereby I will contribute, but what is the impact of my contribution? What will be the impact? Can I be able to rely on our government officials when they say that they are going to do this and they'll actually do it? So as a Kenyan, I'm not more concerned about long-term planning, because remember also the cost of living has gone high. There is more taxation. So I don't mind about tomorrow, I care about today. So whether I'm going to participate on that debate of what are your spending habits, because my voice is too little. That's what the citizens are feeling, that my voice is too little, because we'll complain today and the budget will be slashed. For example, last year when we were approving the budget, it was 4.3 trillion. When they brought in the supplementary budget, we went up to 4.7 trillion. So on that 400 billion growth, we didn't have a lot of, you don't have any control over it. And that's where you realize that, for example, when you look on the budget allocation for State House, for the past 5 years, we've been operating the State House budget about 4 billion. Now it has gone even up to 17, 9 billion, 13 billion, what they are proposing. But you tend to wonder, would the minister, the CS, tell the head of state that reduce your budget? So the main issue here is the tone from the top, and the only person who can help the Kenyans get out of this issue about public spending, mismanagement, and corruption is the head of state. He's the one who will say, I can operate State House with a budget of 6 billion and not the 13 billion you're proposing. But as long as he is comfortable, and he is comfortable about the proposals being brought up, there is no one can go and challenge the head of state. Remember, he has a sword and the constitution with on his heart. So in this case, for us to improve on public spending, for us to improve the cost of living, the only key person who is going to help us on this is the head of state.
All right. But going back to pre-constitutional change, pre-2010, many Kenyans did not engage, or only got to the opportunity to engage with the budget-making process on budget day. Yeah, nobody bothered much about it. It's whatever government says, they will do either way. And the promise with the 2010 constitution was that was going to change, and that we get to interact more with the budget-making process for even a longer period. But it would appear that we have gone back to whatever was happening. Many Kenyans feel it's futile to even try to engage with this budget-making process. Are we saying we've lost the plot, even despite the provisions of the Constitution?
I wouldn't say that we've lost the plot. First, I agree with you that the 2010 Constitution, as it has been largely considered very progressive, this is one area that it did as good. I remember back in the day, we had to wait, listen to the CS, take notes, and be able to say, oh, this is what has happened. It was his secret card. We never had an opportunity to be able to interact with the papers, to be able to interact with the estimates, or even the proposals prior to that. It was, whatever was in that briefcase was top secret. And so when we say the 2010 constitution was indeed progressive, it's because it appreciated the fact that the budget affects the mwananchi's lives, and it is important that mwananchi is involved in that whole process. So to the question whether we've now gone back to those days, I don't think so. I actually believe that Kenyans are still very alive to the fact that this is happening. They are aware. I think what has happened from 2024 and now is that the government has also been a little bit tactical. If you look at the proposals that were there in 2024, they were very offending clauses. For example, I remember there was that motor vehicle circulation tax, and Kenyans were asking, what is this? Also remember that 2024 finance bill came at the backdrop of the 2023 finance bill that introduced the housing levy and then there was a new NSSF rate, there was a new SHIF that came into being, and which was higher compared to the 320 that Kenyans were paying. So all those things culminated to the anger that we saw in 2024. Now, what has happened is that government has been introducing a little, you know, by and by. We even had an amendment to the tax laws in December, which Kenyans may not have noted. So I think the change in approach, also I think another thing that has happened is because government was faulted in 2024 for having not communicated well. I saw this year there was an attempt to be able to explain what is in the finance bill. We've seen the cabinet CS body in many forums explaining the proposals in the finance bill. We've also seen graphics. I think I even saw Parliament do graphics and trying to explain what is. So I think it's that change of approach that has managed the anger of Kenyans, and also has taken away misinformation, because at times there's misinformation, but also with that explanation and giving communication, it gives Kenyans hope that maybe they'll be listened to, because they can see the government making an attempt to reach out.
All right. Well, indeed, this is our special coverage of the 2026-2027 budget. Let's now listen to the CS Treasury as it, and what he's saying currently.
A lot of jobs. Are you doing something around that?
Yeah, of course, we are investing quite significantly in agriculture as the backbone of our economy. Remember, agriculture is also largely devolved, and I think that is also something that we are missing in our discussions when we talk about underfunding agriculture. Agriculture is heavily devolved, but the government is coming up with interventions to support a number of crops, both for food consumption and exports. Like tea, you can see in the past 2-3 years, the government has invested a lot in the tea sector. We have also invested a lot in the revival of the coffee sector. We have invested a lot in edible oil, and I will speak to that in Parliament. We have also invested a lot now in sugar reforms and many other crops. But again, in the food production, you can see the efforts that the government has put in terms of subsidy, fertilizer subsidy, provision of seeds, has helped us in increasing the quantity or the amount of food or maize, which is our staple food. The production of maize has gone up. Well, we have also been lucky that the weather has been favorable, but the government's intervention is clearly visible and evident.
All right, so
that is for agriculture.
Yeah, one final question for me, Waziri, is when you look at just looking at the funding of this budget, the revenue underperformance is still a major headache.
Yeah.
What is your plan around that?
Revenue performance is still a big challenge, and it is informed by a number of factors. One of them is the inefficiency at the KRA that cannot be wished away, but there have also been some challenges in terms of tax administration. I will point out that our tax administration has challenges because the business has moved from the normal traditional way to more into, again, informal sector, and besides that, there has also been the movement towards the digital economy. And so we are doing a lot of reforms. In the supplementary budget that we prepared, we had allocation for KRA to do reforms, to carry out reforms, about 17 billion. And a lot of reforms are happening at the KRA. And I'm sure then in the next or the coming financial year, KRA will be able to collect more without raising tax rates. And if you look at my finance bill that I presented to Parliament, it's heavy on reforms and tax administration as opposed to raising tax rates, contrary to what others have been saying.
Waziri, thank you very much. I know you touched a bit on agriculture. There are quite a number of votes that have been seen to reduce allocation when we look at supplementary one and this particular budget. Agriculture is one of them. You're cutting almost 10 billion shillings from there. Energy is one of the major cuts also that you've seen, almost 72 billion. Can you talk to us about this? But education, actually one of the biggest bumps also on the other side, getting a huge, allocation. Talk to me about this balancing act that you have to consider when you're making this particular budget.
We have tried to maintain most of the provisions under the agriculture sector, no major cuts. I will tell you, in the fertilizer subsidy, we have maintained almost the same amount of 18 billion. We have also maintained almost similar amount in sugar reforms at 2.5. Yes, we have reduced a bit. Parliament actually cuts the coffee cherry, but I think we need to put a little more on the coffee debt, because that is where money is needed. We had provided for 1 billion was cut from the coffee cherry, and I thought it would be put under the debt, but Parliament in its own wisdom decided to reallocate the fund elsewhere. We are also putting more resources in providing coffee seeds, and so we have not really underfunded the agriculture budget. But energy, you are right. Energy, we did an assessment and we came to a conclusion that a number of projects and programs, this is a zero-based budget. We have started implementing zero-based budget where you justify every shilling that you are asking from the national coffers. So when we looked at the energy sector, we realized a number of projects are actually commercially viable, and that is why we started the National Infrastructure Fund. So we have taken them out of the budget, not that they are not going to be funded, but they are going to be funded differently by applying the National Infrastructure Fund and PPP program. So definitely, energy sector will still be funded heavily, but way out of our
Waziri. Lastly from you, Waziri,
then I come to yes.
We talk about the issue of Tax Procedures Act. Lots of changes right there.
Yeah.
Especially this movement from zero-rated to tax-exempt. Yeah. And one of the areas that we've seen with the current government is the issue of affordable housing. There's been proposition now, we are moving them from exempt to, rather from zero-rated to exempt. And some people are saying, is this counter administration, which is actually very forward with issues to do with affordable housing?
No, far from it. My finance bill is working more towards simplifying tax collection and making it efficient. Let me put it this way. Yes, that provision was put there to attract more investment into affordable housing sector. But you also have to review. When you have a tax expenditure like that, you continuously review its performance. If it is not adding much value to the economy, then it has no business being left, because it's an expenditure. When you have Kenyans claiming for taxes, it is us who pay for it. Those of us who probably are not even involved in that business. So we have looked at the value being added, and there is not much value. But two, there is a problem. There is a problem in the sense that administering that provision or that tax expenditure is very difficult, and it is causing a lot of leakages. Now, if you say that cement, for example, for affordable housing, you will not tax, steel, etc., how do you determine? How do you separate? How do you ensure that the cement that has been bought is actually going to affordable housing and is not going to current to put up my house? So those challenges we are trying to eliminate by removing zero rating and taking them to exempt. We are not going to tax them, but we put exempt so that there are no claims, because there have been unnecessary claims that don't make sense at all.
And how about EVs? Because we've also seen a lot of focus on EVs.
Again, we are saying we should move as many items as possible to exempt and not zero rating. The exempt are also, they are not paying tax. The only thing is that they are not going to claim input tax. And this allowing of input tax claims is creating a lot of problems, because then you allow all kinds of unscrupulous people to come forward. And by the way, if you look at our medium-term revenue strategy and tax policy, national tax policy, it is clear on what we need to do. And it is clear on the fact that we should remove most items from zero-rated to exports. We should only allow export commodities to be zero rated. We have left some under zero rating still because they are very essential and very sensitive, like bread, like milk and the rest. But ordinarily, almost all items need to go to either exempt or vatable at the standard rate. Zero rating is not the right thing to do. It creates tax expenditure, it creates tax leakages and tax planning, which is not very good.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so maybe, yeah.
Waziri, my name is Sydney Chazima from TV47. This president spoke about a reduction in VAT, taxes on VAT, which hit revenue collection by 14.4 billion shillings. Are you going to see a supplementary too?
The supplementary too that you are going to see is not major, it's not on cuts. We've just proposed some realignments on donor-funded projects and some 3 or so items. We are maybe spending about 6 more billion. We have tried as much as possible to limit supplementary too, and that's the final one. You can see clearly that we are walking the talk. I said we are not going to have many supplementary budgets as it has been. We have only had one, and then there's this second one, is just realigning donor-funded projects. So we will not. We will see how to accommodate the same in our expenditure. Yes.
Thank you very much.
All right, CS Treasury there, John Buddy, just talking to journalists and giving them some highlights and snippets of what to expect in the budget statement that he's going to be presenting to Parliament later this afternoon. Allow me to thank my guests this morning and for having given us time since 6:30 till now. This is CPA Joshua Kamwere, a financial consultant, also a council member of ISPAC, and Wycliffe Bichanga, also a council member of ISPAC. Asanteni sana. ISPAC is the Institute of Certified Public Accountants of Kenya. Asanteni sana for your time at TV47. Let's now go to Parliament, where we have our reporter Hibak Said there and a whole team of other journalists prepared to cover the budget day. Remember, today is our special coverage of the budget 2026-2027. Hibak Said, good morning. Over to you now.
All right. Thank you so much, Freddie, and good morning. This morning, straight from the National Parliament, we have with us the Member of Parliament from Kesses, CPA Julius Ruto, who's going to be dissecting some of the numbers as we wait for the Treasury Cabinet Secretary John Buddy this afternoon to tell us what exactly is going to be happening and some of the numbers that they're going to be sharing. What are the effects it's going to be having on the ordinary morning issue? Thank you so much for joining us. This is one of the highest budgets that we've ever had, 4.8 trillion. What informs this?
Well, first of all, it's an indicator that the economy of Kenya is no longer static, it's dynamic, pushing up. But probably from the statement of the Cabinet Secretary who is going to lay the highlights, it will make clarity on where is the focus of this budget, what has pushed it, fiscal space to that level. Yes, because what I know and what all of us will know from the discussion, we've had a moment to interact with this estimate on fundamental level, and most of the challenges or most of the causes, the determinants, the drivers are pressures on the expenditure side that are over 60 major, not variable, and these are the ones that have pulled up the strain on this budget to that level, beside the demands that have to be made. Because again, as much as you want to satisfy the demands that are fixed in nature, you also have to look at the variables, because the variables are the ones which pushes growth in our economy. So why we are there because of one, debt repayment. We just grow to 125, that is a consolidated tax capital. We are there because of pressure on growth on releases to devolution. Pronunciation of the Constitution was that the revenue to county governments has to grow, and it has been growing. All cumulative, the shareable revenue, which is now at 428 plus conditional grants and equalization, is almost 500 billion. We are there because of demand on critical services, social services like education. which have been facing through challenges. Yes, it stands out to be the top earner in this budget because it speaks about 700 billion
right.
Against all the other sectors. And it's only one sector. But again, it's still not sufficient enough, especially capitation, to sustain the policy on free education in Kenya, basically, and basic education. We are also here because of elections. Remember, elections is just around the corner. Elections encompasses a lot of activities. Both the agency that is concerned, who has to prepare for election in terms of equipment. Remember, Kenya, we have adopted e-election. We are digitally based, and in digital it has a lot of component in terms of investment in equipment and systems. Knowing that this is a very contested election, and we've come through experience of pronunciation by the Supreme Court, and in every preparation has to respond to the pronunciation of the Supreme Court, so that we attain what we call a free, fair, and credible election.
Mheshimiwa, let me just divert you for a minute there. Right, you've said 4.8 trillion because our needs are growing as a country. Of course, we do know that some of these things have to be undertaken, considering next year will be a big year for the country. However, the Kenya Kwanza government has been so big on fiscal consolidation and ensuring that we stay within our means and we never bite off more than we can chew. 4.8 trillion from 4.2 trillion last year. What exactly could justify this?
Well, that's why I started by saying there are some fixed elements that are forcing the expenditure upwards. That when you say fixed, they're not variable in nature, they have to be done. Like repayment of loan interest. The law is very categorical that it forms first charge. We are doing now 1.5. Anything under consolidated fund services is a fixed cost, and it is informed by the projections that have to be made, and these are determined because they are on black and white. They have to be paid within the next 12 months, so it has to be provided. We are also faced on the law on support of devolution, the constitutionality requirements, that it has to grow, because again, we expect growth in developed governments. It has to be there. There is fixed elements like salaries for civil servants, public service.
Let's focus on that for a minute. Ordinary revenue remains at around 3 trillion shillings, of course. This could be grown by, widening the tax base. However, the government has been so strict on reducing some of our expenditure, especially expenditure that is recurrent. Why are we not taking that up as much?
That's what I'm saying. I think we also got to look at audits on these expenditures. We've been saying over and over, and it has given just a latitude of political discussion, saying, there is over expenditure here, there is wastage here, but we've never had a clarity on exactly where are we having a wastage. Because if you have the spread of that expenditure, you can not easily pick and say, because the department has a development element, but they need the current to run the development. I mean, without travel, without supervision, without office operations, how will you implement your core activity programs, So you cannot divorce recurrent from development or from the mandate of the entity. So when are we going to say, where are these wastages? That's what I'm saying. We are in a precarious situation where we are pushed from the demand than from the supply. Unlike established nations or economies, where you look at, first of all, what do we have? Then what do we spend? Here is, how are we going to generate for this expenditure? That's why finance bill keep changing. It informs why every year we have a new proposals for finance bill. Not because of anything, especially now, current finance bill is looking at tax expenditure, which has been a phenomenon, it has been a problem, it has been a burden. We are doing 600 billion in exemptions, in subsidies. So current finance bill of 2026 is not looking at increasing tax, but adjusting the policy to reduce tax expenditure. Of course, it will still convert the burden back to the consumer. This time around, it's focusing on the consumer, not on the taxpayer per se, on the direct tax. It focuses on the indirect taxes. So we are in a precarious situation because you sit down, but the expenditure is growing, leave alone even now operation on the current that we are picking. Because out of this, recurrent and development are the one falling under deficit right now. Because we have a deficit of around 1.2. And development of that is 700. Then it means the other balance is recurrent. So the fixed element is salaries, we have to pay salaries. Fixed element is repayment of debt, we have to pay repayment of debt. Fixed element is releases to counties, we have to release those in counties. Fixed element is now also other services like education. I mean, already what we have, 700 billion, is not enough. I've seen security. Our asked for growth from 200 and something to 500 because of preparation of election. You compromise with it, you have no nation. You know? So put all those things that are fixed in nature. Leave alone the recurrent. Let's set aside even development, assuming we cease, we shut down development. We shut down any other core activities of ministries and pay salaries. I don't know for what work, but pay salaries.
Right.
I don't know for what service, but pay salaries. We give money to counties and expect counties to deliver. I don't know whether they are delivering because we have other questions on counties. How they are using this. We are constraining to have them have these resources. I don't know if they are turning these resources into a service and are good for money. So without any moving, remember we have other institutions provided by the Constitution, offices that have to be supported to run their mandate. Those in cohesion, ensure that there is stability in the nation. Those looking, every commission has got its role for proper governance. Office of the Auditor General for them to tell us what is happening, to scrutinize and empower this house here to be able to do their work. This house again to do their work, move outside and run the oversight. But when we cease and ask them now not to increase the budget of Parliament, reduce and remain just legislate, don't go outside to oversight because you don't have resources to oversight. Again saying now then let's stop from development. Maybe that's when we can say we can do renovation of the house.
All right, let's talk
Otherwise,
about
what is incremental going up are driven by demand, not even on elements that are variable. That's why I've used the word fixed and variable, because variable is something you can debate upon.
Mheshimiwa, you've talked about renovating the house. You know, we're jumping the gun. We're jumping into things that we cannot really afford at the moment.
I'm just putting it for our discussion,
right?
So that we understand why we are going to 4.8 trillion, not because of how to over ambitious. You know, sometimes you can make what you call an over ambitious budget, just because you think you want to force things to happen for your accolade. This one doesn't require even accolade. In fact, in any case, discussion around National Infrastructure Fund, Sovereign Wealth Bill will be pulling out pressure from the main budget now so that we have ring-fenced resources for development. So future where we are going, we will not be even expecting development on the main budget. So we'll be having a budget, a consolidated fund, what you call a consolidated account, all collections, focusing on recurrent and paying of debts.
Which is important for fiscal consolidation. Let's focus on this renovating aspect that you're talking about. The opposition has come up with an alternative budget of around 4.3 trillion shillings, which they say is more efficient for the country at the moment. And they have talked about pain points, including some of the things that you have talked about, travel and such. As the head of state is one of the people who travel the most, do you believe that there are some ways as a CPA that we can cut some of these, superfluous spendings and ensure that we live within our means?
But by now, it's not a question of making a political statement for the purpose of today and just give a diversion on what is happening. I would have expected, and I know consolidation of the so-called opposition, people who are experienced, like Alonso Mushoka, who has been the vice president of this republic, like Matiang'i, who has been the chief cabinet secretary, to me understands all sectors. I would have expected them to give us stipulation and say, this is for body, and this is what we are saying. Under education, remove this, do this. Under security, this is what is over expenditure, remove this, do this. Under this sector, if we would have those critical, it will help us have a clear discussion whether those in power now are oversighting some things, assuming some things, or are over ambitious. Otherwise, we are just making political statement against the realities. I'm saying, can we for once become a realistic people, a realistic regime, a realistic generation? I agree. Some of the problems we are struggling with, like payment of debt, we should not be there. Because some of the debts, we don't know where they went. Some questions have to be done, and we need clear audits report. These 11 trillion debts that were there when this regime came in, it has grown to 12 trillion. Now we are around 12.5. Where, if we apportion them, because most of the debts are meant for development. Not that Kenya is exceptional of borrowing. Even developed countries are borrowing, but they are borrowing for development. How's our borrowing, like our domestic borrowing now, is for recurrent. We are borrowing to repay. Because there is a debt falling due on Thursday, you don't have money, sell treasury bills, sell infrastructure bonds, raise money, relieve that debt by using another debt. Are you getting me? Because even if we raise taxes, even the ability of realizing those taxes at the go is not possible. It has to take time. It is timely. Business taxes come once in a month. Salary taxes comes once in a month. I mean, you cannot say you defer some of the fixed costs. You cannot defer, it has to run. So what I'm saying is this, if we become realistic on what we are saying, there are some things that we must call ourselves into order. And one of it is, yes, we must borrow to sustain. But for how long are we going to borrow for the current? This is where we are missing out the point. This is where we are hurting. Because if you reduce the CFS, you will have enough money to reduce even our budget. And we arrive at a balanced budget. Yes, we've been dreaming that we will have a zero-based budget. We will have a balanced budget where we are going to raise enough revenue for the sake of this. When are we going to do this? If we are not focusing on triggering sectors that can generate like manufacturing. Because at the moment, manufacturing sector is still at a slow pace. We are now talking about CIVES, where we expect counties to build up on industrial parks and encourage small-scale manufacturing coming up. EBZs, AEZs, we are going to trigger all this and increase our GDP. We are constrained on that, but we only relying on few sectors, agriculture, which is purely subsistence.
Right, so you do admit that we borrow more than we should be borrowing.
I admit that we borrow, and the unfortunate part is that we are borrowing for the current. That is where we have a problem.
But then the president and the Kenya Kwanza government had said that they have a silver bullet for this problem 3 years ago. What happened? Where did we lose
That's what I'm saying. You see, one thing that we get here, like 2024 finance bill, was it necessary for us to demonstrate? Because we took politics out of a good plan. Because there is no shortcut. Whether we borrow now, we have to pay through taxes. It is taxes. Either you defer tax, you pay today, or you divide to pay tomorrow through borrowing. This is what has been happening for years. Since Kibaki time, because it's like Kibaki who came and opened up our budget from 300 billion of Moi to 500 billion from Moi up to 1.something trillion. Uhuru shook it around 3.something. Now it is going to 4.8 because of what is being pushed. It's a push budget. Now put aside that one. In 2024, where some measures were meant to even inspire manufacturing on consumption, basic consumption like sanitary towels. You remember what they said? No, this government doesn't want us to go through on our biological process. What the government was trying to say, if we have an opportunity to manufacture these things in Kenya and retain employment here, why should we rely on importing cheap things, what they are consumables, and we can create an opportunity? Because unless we reason around that area, but whenever measures are put in place, we take politics out of it. So listen first. No, you asked the question on why this government has not done anything. They have tried. But when they are trying, and you put the politics that we've subjected everything, we are in constant campaign throughout the year. Immediately you lose, you start eating on who is there. You don't even give an opportunity to deliver. And what are we doing? Of course, I don't mean that we don't need to critique a regime. A regime has to be subjected to accountability. That's a requirement of the Constitution. But objectively. But how we look at demonstration we took around here. We killed the businesses, even those who have yielded more tax and reduced on borrowing. Because in the presence of more growth of tax realized, then borrowing should come down. And the worst borrowing is, as I've said, for the current. Yes. But under a scenario where we are discrediting, we don't support, we are killing, we even now perpetrated the attitude. Right now people tell you, why should I pay tax? And I was in public participation, I've been going through public participation, and members of the public are telling me, Mheshimiwa, this is a good plan. But because we don't trust those people in the regime, we are not going to buy this one. Not because of anything. It's a good plan, they have understood, but because of, so look at that politics.
Right. Can we just focus on home economics for a minute? Kenyans are saying that they don't have the money to give, that times have been hard for the last 3 years. So are you saying it's a situation where one thing must bite the other? It's either the Kenyan ameekelewa chini, amefinyiliwa, or we have a budget that is just going to pay on debts.
As it is, the reality, as I've said, is the budget we have now is constrained on non-core. And for this purpose, I'm using this non-core. Any budget should be supportive of productivity. Right. You understand me? Right. Other than agriculture sector and the subsidies, we are seeing the importance that on tax expenditure, because that's another trouble we have in tax expenditure. Right. That is hurting us. We are doing around 700 on subsidies and exemptions. That's what this finance bill, as I was saying, is trying to mitigate on that, so that it can relieve our tax revenue upwards in terms of realization. But for Kenyan situation, where we are, as I said, as home, this is our reality, where we are. That we must balance as time goes. Of course, We should not be forcing people to pay tax. It should be voluntary. We just need to enhance more civic education and also those in service delivery. We also should not be looking at taxpayer alone, because some of the questions raised by taxpayer are legit. Should you go to a health facility? We have share, but going to a health facility, there is no drugs, surely. I mean, what motivation would you have that person to pay more tax? It is us in governance, especially those in executive, who have been given the mandate to deliver, to be committed and do their work. The issue of wastages are there. They are there for the purpose of that. Why pay salary people who are not delivering? Look at me. We have counties now, all this increase. We have increasing now to 428. But I'm sorry to say, those money will not be converted into development. They will be hiring. So? They will be hiring for the sake of election to come. Right. You understand? So if you look at PE of county government, almost 50% against the legal requirement of 35%. Why? Because of political pressure. Because he's a governor who is elected and requires to be re-elected. So you use an opportunity to go and say, oh, you know, are we getting the point? Right. You know, that is where I'm calling the wastages that are visible. Even near PSS, somebody will plan for a training, a capacity building and a training, and have a lot of entourage of people who are irrelevant. Like you mentioned the issue of travel, and I will not forget to say that, because what we will say, President is traveling. For God's sake, President is a symbol of national unity. It's a link of the people of Kenya to the world. We cannot remain isolated. He has to be there to ensure that there are opportunities in terms of trade, bilateral engagement, which creates opportunity for Kenya. What you all need to be evaluating is, are there results? Exactly. For us. Like today, we need to know, when you went to Europe, what results are there for us. For me, I've seen one opportunity to use my CDF, train some few youth on seafarers, because it's an opportunity to get around 1,000 youth to go to Norway. Can I stand a chance of getting my people of cases, even 10 of them? I'm going back and asking who is interested, who can meet these qualifications. I support under bursary of CTF those youth of C-, D+ who are at home. Say, those are opportunities we want to evaluate. Look at what Norway are saying, they would come and invest because of opportunity in Kenya over green energy to manufacture here and supply back, create employment. So we cannot limit that office from doing that. But is it reasonable? The question is that. So we need to be looking at audit reports, not the reports on misinformed and disinformed for political reasons, knowing that the election is next year. Sometimes we tend to discuss issues which have no reality. And I think that's why it's a cause of also where we are today. We've left out on looking at core issues as a nation and value misinformation, disinformation, and propagandas. Take time on that, incite our feelings against each other, and end up not supporting progressive policies for that purpose. And I think we have lost on that. But otherwise, to say the truth, wastages are there, are visible, even in these offices. Some of them will come. We were sitting as committees the other day, and ministers were coming, PSS, please, we don't have enough money, give us this money, yes, these are our programs, we've been allocated this one, and for us to be able to achieve these targets this year, we need this, you know. They will tell you that. But when you tell them results, where have you delivered on them? There are 8 are not there, there's no money. By the time we are coming supplementary, they're asking for additional. When you tell them where are the results, this mismatch is that. That's what I'm saying. We also need to call ourselves those people who have been appointed to places, nominated to places, elected to places. Let us have the heart of service for our people. Let us be driven by the humanity.
The CPA, let's do that right now. You're talking about auditing. Auditing has been spoken about at length for the past 3 years. In every single budget, the cabinet secretary would say that they are focusing on auditing in order to ensure that we reduce our spendings. What do you think is the missing link? Why are we not getting that, solution for the problem?
I think you would also be in a better position because you are an oversight, and you've been following audit committees. Look at what is happening in Senate. I saw what Senator Jerarge was speaking about, irrelevance in audit findings, employing staff in counties that were not properly employed, quote unquote, over what you call cost worker. The question, where are the agencies, where EACC? Because we have no short of agencies to run this. I think some other agencies are not doing their work, so that people have developed immune of saying, anyway, if any auditor will say this, what will happen? You see, that attitude is coming because of having a failed institutions who are not doing their task well. They need to do their task well. Again, I'm sure that all hold that the requirements in the courts for a case to go through is where we fail. And whether it's deliberate, it's a budgeted solution on those issues, because a case can come up. You see letters left side from EACC, officers are coming, confiscating. Beyond there, nothing has happened. We've seen these people coming scot-free. So how will you tell us now that today people will fear, will imply, that fear, the character of avoiding to be contradicted or to be found in the wrong side and using the resource as well. So these people develop, they read, they learn and say, after all, my friend, you only have one chance to live. So if you are there, you mess up, as long as you plan on how to manage to clean your messes. I think that is the wrong attitude where we are going. So sometimes we point a finger on one person and we fail to know that the same constitution has created independent officers away from political influence, away from presidential influence, DCI, ESCC, and many other agencies, SRC, So sometimes reports get up to Parliament. Parliament will discuss and they will make a recommendation. You get me?
Right.
Some of the audits raised today, you follow up on the follow-up next audit, it doesn't come out. So sometimes you know whether it has been corrected or it was silenced out. So.
All right.
Yeah.
Maybe, you're a representative of the people. You are the voice of the people. You should hold, those in governance on accountability because you are the voice of the people from a policy standpoint. What are some of the solutions that you have raised or has been raised within Parliament in order to ensure that the budget or the money that is being raised is used for the right things?
Yeah, that's the beauty of having a Parliament, which is an independent arm of government. And that's why most of the time you realize we are constantly engaging agencies, MDAs, on committees. I think for the first time, I don't know the previous parliaments, in this parliament of 2013, even media people you've witnessed, every other time this house of ours, Bunge Towers, is busy, rooms are busy because we are calling on agencies to come and explain. We are even us as we are doing finance bill, we are to call the agencies, those who are asking for a review on some policies, to give them latitude to collect, to raise, explain what have you been doing on this one. Because without that explanation, why hurt economy? Why hurt people? That's what we are doing, trying to tighten. It's a progressive thing anyway. But what I'm asking is that, of course, even members of public, we are going to election. Would you mind also, for one reason, sit down and get us good people, get leaders who mean well for the people? Because it's also a character. You can legislate, but you cannot legislate a character.
You're a CPA, you're a certified public accountant.
Yes.
You're saying that we're in some sort of rat race, we're constantly borrowing, so we have to constantly repay and it's bloating our budget. What do you think are some of the, solutions that we can take, not only as a country, but as different ministries, in order to ensure that we do not see a number like this again next year?
First of all, the aspect and the desire of I should have everything is an attitude that we must bring down. It's good to speak to ourselves, and I want to pray that even ministries would be here today to see how the cabinet secretary will be struggling to reconcile and to lay the agenda and the focus of the nation. Productivity is everything. Today, tell me, if we focus on health and deliver on health, and Mwananchi feels I go to facility and I'm served well, even this crisis will not be there. Mwananchi will be motivated to produce. You get me? Then we also need to look at now value chain because of other production, productivity. Look at the value chains in terms of MSMEs, trade sector. I mean, what I'm saying, if every sector gets committed to their work, and we stop this aspect of I should have competition of budgeting for the purpose of amassing. You understand? If all of us, I pray that we get confirmed, we get converted in our mindset and for people, so that you use the little resources. By the time you are preparing an expenditure, clear that expenditure, the outcome of it, and evaluate. If it doesn't pay any results, abandon that one and go for something else. What am I trying to put across? We will lower our recurrent expenditure. That's number one. If counties will help us deliver on other services, so that when India are able to receive services on the ground without looking at national, we will lessen the pressure of duplicating, because it's another aspect of duplicating. Like I was saying, and I've been using this for quite some time, National Police Service Commission and National Police Service. I saw the other day conflicting on the same roles. The parent law is saying commission should do this. The act says the service should do this because of expertise. So what is now, and then in the long run, the work of this one has been, mandate of this one has been taken by this one. So I retain this one and there's no money, there's no work to be done. You get me? So all those and many other commissions that are severally there and other agencies that are over duplicating in nature. I mean, if we stick to our core mandate and reduce on this, we will have no burden of ballooning money here, but let the other agencies who are with the people, counties, do the work. And in the long run, we just retain little resources. If it's agriculture, let them remain with policy aspects. Guide on the national policy where the nation is going, and advise on counties on how they are going to implement the national policy in their programs. Because the two levels of government is one thing at the same time. In the long run, they are serving one agenda, one goal. So if we go that direction, probably we might scale down our budget by another 300 billion. Because as the rate at where we are going, I'm scared to say I don't see us coming down. The only thing we should be struggling is to raise our revenue without adding taxes, but raise by triggering and refocusing this money to sectors that are going to trigger our growth. Like manufacturing, I still cry. This aspect of manufacturing, now we are trying on mining, and that's why we have now sovereign wealth bill. This thing is going, it's a game changer. It's a game changer. And National Infrastructure Fund is a game changer. With effectiveness on this one, we will reduce the pressure on the budget side. And we might only be having a budget for repaying on loans and this, and also will reduce the pressure on borrowing for consolidated fund services, on borrowing for consolidated account. And then commit what you are generating and reinvest for infrastructure. And I want to believe this infrastructure again should be viable enough to generate back. Not any other infrastructure, not building a road going to Mheshimiwa's home, and there's nothing for Mheshimiwa to be shown. Build a road that targets many farmers and see farmers producing, increasing their production. And if it is dairy farmers, let us have support in terms of equipment, cooling plants. Let us look at processing this one into a high value product, and let us look at market. If we link this one out of this chain, we will be able to solve our problem. Otherwise, as we only relying on few sectors, producing to hit, and we expect the budget to reduce, we are deceiving ourselves.
Right.
We must redirect in our mindset, first of all in our mindset, that this is not going to be sustainable. We can change regimes because that's why elections are there, but we will not change the problem.
Right.
The problem is going to fall on all of us. And I'm also asking Kenyans, for some reason, let's be rational enough to look at the nitty-gritty issues of our nation. Even as we critique, let us direct and pick out. I've been asking civil society whenever we engage, help us, because we have time and experts to pin out. Some things comes to the floor of the house, they come as a block. We will debate as a block. But that budget, the spread of it, we need someone who has more time to cherry pick and say, look at this. In this budget, we've seen this and this and this and this going here. And then your truly honorable house here will be able to focus on those ones. And because the power of making the budget is here, we are able to remove those money that we may not cut it there, remove and move to where it is relevant. So that we spend what is relevant and reasonable with outcome. Yes.
Now, CPA, you've given a very good solution, to be honest, reducing the budget you said by about 300 billion Kenyan shillings. You are within the Kenya Kwanza government. Why do you think that this is not reflecting on the budgets, not only this year, but the years before?
Because as I've told you, again repeating, out of inherited problems, hereditary problems is trying what is being cured now.
It's been 3 years. You can no longer say inherited.
You cannot manage, because remember, debts fall due. Those which were borrowed, like which was procured 10 years or 5 years, maybe the due period, like now, the Eurobond, which was falling due in February 2023. And the outgoing regime are not done liability management, are not set aside resources to retire that Eurobond. What happened? He had to look at everything possible, because drifting out, but you see, it cost, it hurted somewhere, because there were no resources. So it means you have to hurt somewhere for the sake of sorting this one to protect the credibility of the nation on credit worthiness. You understand? Because drifting out of it, it has a lot of implications, including inflation, including interest, including qualification of a country as a destination of investment, FDIs. It had a lot of implications. So you have to hurt somewhere. So after hurting there, you will come and delay the further things for the sake of. So it has a replicable, it has a revolving effect. It has a multiply effect in it. So a decision made to sort out a problem which you are not planned for, you are going to cause another problem. So it takes time. And number two, we've never had a yielding economy, year one, year two, that it can
double up to cover the problem and retain a surplus to now move forward. So it's something that can be, as in the generation and the exit, the entry and exit are not in equivalent volume. I mean, if you are using a tap for water, another one is inserting in at a 4 inch, the other one is exiting at 6 inch. How long will it take to balance? It will take time. If you need engineers to calibrate well the pressure on this one to equate the exit, that time will not be filled.
All right.
Yes.
Let's talk about a solution that the government has come up with, the National Infrastructure Fund. This is a fund that is going to be used to boost some sectors such as the transport and logistics sector, energy, water and irrigation, digital infrastructure, so on and so forth. The government had realized that the money that we are accruing through revenue is not necessarily enough and we have to make some changes. How exactly does the National Infrastructure Fund come into the wider budget and development of the country?
President is visiting Europe, and what he came to learn in Norway is a small country, but it's a leading country on utilization of sovereign wealth. That even now it's rated among the first countries which have invested the wealth, the funding, that wealth in many security markets around the world, New York, London, everywhere, because of the use of that. Removing the pressure on the main budget on critical, desired, required, essential infrastructural intervention was a wise thought, and it's not the first thing to happen in Kenya. It has happened in other progressive countries. So this one is able to focus resources, unlike, you see what the law says about the consolidated account, you know, money collected, it goes to consolidated account, then it will be dispensed as per the budget through the controller of budget. And you know the law says any money that comes to consolidated account, it's fast charge, repayment of that is fast charge. So whatever you collect from royalties from mining, you collect from proceeds of realizing, reorganizing or privatization. If it goes to consolidated fund account, and then the rule is laid out, pay debts. You understand? So, and that's why bending bills were growing. But since the time this policy of relieving using securitization money from fuel, it has helped roads to get back because contractors were paid their bending bills and they are now on the side doing the work. And they are assisting in growing that economy and creating employment. This one is able to reinvent, it's able to focus this money. And it's going to pick up on projects that have been left for long because of lack of direct intervention, like water. We are seeing Kenya, for us to be manufacturing economy, we need energy capacity of 10,000 megawatts and above. Right now we are producing 3,000. So as it is right now, we don't have a room to change into manufacturing economy without support of this. So if we invest this money and strategically look at areas, be it dams, be it more on geothermal, be it on wind energy, and put more money there and generate more megawatts, we will be a manufacturing economy. If we become a manufacturing economy, number one, we will address the issues of unemployment. And once we address the issue of unemployment, we grow our revenue, tax revenue. We're also going to grow in indirect tax revenue. And also, under the process of this, there will be money coming back. Issues of PPP, public-private partnership, like the Rironi Mausamit road. Right. If this road will be finished, this road will be tolled. And it's not unique. It happens in developed economy. I was in Dallas, George Bush Road. You have to pay to go through it. I was in South Africa sometimes back. Almost the main corridors that is connecting the interstates are tolled. And these are developed countries. And many other roads. So with this PPP, it's going to convert service, and at the same time, it's going to be self-reliable. As long as viability study was done well, visibility study was done well, to look at the end results, that is going to pay back. And I'm sure in future, this asset, like now expressway, at first people were lamenting about the expressway, but today, you sit and look at what is happening. There is already traffic jam there, because everyone has found it is more convenient to use there. Pay 300, pay 500, and you get your service. But in the long run, this project is self-sustaining. And I'm sure the only thing is that we are looking for disclosures. The only problem is that how it was done. Again, the same problem I was telling you, disclosures around it. But if it's something that can be wound up in the shortest time possible, it is a good asset that can be laid for additional resources for other roads. for other works. And that's how the economies are sustained. So this project, the other project, will not be looking at this budget. So in the long run, we will be seeing development that has impact with the budget, but will not be pushing the budgets upwards. So that's what I'm saying. Maybe 2-3 years to come, the budget will be stagnating either 4.5 or downwards 4, as long as we are now able to absorb the other problems that we were pushing on this. Having a deficit, it will reduce the deficit by its nature because this project is going to sustain itself. And remember, it is a repaying. In that fund, it's like a revolving. You spend on it, and these projects are able to pay back. If it is dam, irrigation, and you see farmers are growing their inputs and their produce, it goes up. We look at manufacturing out of that one. We look at employment. In itself, it's going to repay back and sustain the global economy.
All right, Bwana CPA, I just want us to look at our balance sheets and to look at our ledgers, because we do know that there was the securitization of the RMLF, but we also see that within this very budget, there was an allocation for roads for 230 billion. You did say that we need to balance our in-tap with our out-tap. Our in-tap is getting more flow. How exactly are we going to balance this out?
You see? Come up again.
The RMLF has been securitized, but we're also seeing an allocation of 230 billion for roads, right? So that is an addition of the resources that are going to be used for the roads. How exactly is the government going to balance out? Because we're seeing we're still budgeting for this money, but we're also getting funds from another source.
One, of course, what we are collecting from RMLF is not sufficient enough, especially on the commitments that are already existing. So some of these things you are seeing being budgeted are to address the commitments which were existing, so that we have the current securitization address the demands. Remember, the president has been saying over and over that the only total roads connected in Kenya, which are tarmac, are only 28,000 kilometers, and we need a demand to grow it over that for us to realize even our production level connection, opening up new areas, new frontiers like Northeastern with the Karabatula, Modagashi Road. So securitization alone may be used on one specific road, because that connection of road requires a lot of money. So, but we need the continuity and closure of what had been committed. Otherwise, it will lack. It will meet what we call lack of value for money. Having a road that has not been complete, like the one I saw in Dondori, in Denyeru, in Nyandarua. Works has been done halfway. The contractor is stagnant, waiting to be paid, and the road is even wearing out. So even connecting that road and the value of it, you don't realize it. So they need an urgency to finish up those roads, complete. In fact, if like being advised, well, I would rather say even we reduce the ambition of having more roads. President, finish what we started. That is a good spirit. Then now, pick on those critical connectivities that, as I've said, it has a value in it, it has a return in it. That's the way we are going to go. But otherwise, for this political competition, satisfaction, it has a price in it. It has a price in it. It's idea, fanya hivi. But because we are politicians, what does politics have to do? You have to manage politics all over the world. I mean, there's no special way of managing politics. Politics are politics. It's about interest, and you must balance the interest of the people, and it comes with a price. That's what I'm saying. We also need another level of civic education or engagement with members of public to understand this, so that we slow down on our desire, but rather have governance that is able to address this problem, that we have a huger problem than even what we're asking. But others, as long as we're evaluating our government, Kaongo, amedanganya akufanya hii, now you want him to do that. It comes with a price.
All right.
Yes.
But where do you find the balance then? Because you said you're a politician at the end of the day.
Economies, in some way, are something that are progressive and they are resilient in a manner. As long as there is light, you wake up today and you hit and you sleep, economy is running. The speed only varies. So that's what I'm saying. It's a question of time and some other difficult decisions, like the issue of tax expenditures I was telling you. Right now, we are discussing with business people who feel like proposals on tax measure or finance bill 2026 is going to hurt their business in some way, maybe distorting their profit capacity or earning strategies because of these exemptions or deletion from Schedule 1 to Schedule 2 to Schedule 3. Why? Because we are hurted by a problem called tax expenditure, that we are foregoing around 700 billion to facilitate some businesses in the context, in the pretext that we are addressing the consumption. Like bread, bread is zero rated. But if you go to shelves today, the price is increasing. And the government it's not even foregoing. The government has to get tax because anything zero rated, it means it's reimbursable. So the government has to get the collected tax to reimburse this business person who keep increasing the price of bread and give him the money, which is a capital, for him to either expand or address other strategic intervention on that money from government. So for how long are we going to sustain this? So this is a discussion that we want to ask questions. How does this zero rated confer benefit to a consumer? We must link. But as long as it becomes a shady and becomes a politics of trade, politics of business, and we use this politics of business to incite, we are losing something. Because we deny now money, the 230 billion that we are having for roads, we need not to have. If we're able to safeguard this one and reduce tax expenditure, we don't need to increase to 4.8. You understand? So that we retain what is essential. There are things that are very critical of interest and of emergency nature. You see, of emergency nature. So we should just reserve something to address on case by case. But as long as we have used this one as an opportunity to facilitate our trade, it is not safe, but there are people who are traversing out of this. If then that is it. If we don't have a critical way of auditing, and I'm happy we were with Auditor General on Wednesday, on Tuesday, when she was giving her views on finance bill. And what she was speaking out on is about tax expenditure. And she promised to communicate to carry special audit on tax expenditure and communicate to the nation. We are waiting on that report. So that, do we have a value in this expenditure? If we reach a point of accepting and saying, fine, it will be a little bit expensive for us to acquire this, but it is the safest way of reducing this budget downwards by around 500, by around 400, and having these resources go to critical sectors and stop increasing taxes.
All right.
Yes.
Thank you so much, CPA, for some of the knowledgeable facts that you have disseminated today, and some of the ways that the CPA believes that this budget could be managed in order to ensure that some of the numbers we're seeing jumping around could be reduced by around 400 to 500 billion. He's talking about auditing, and not just auditing, but the best of auditing in order to ensure that the government stays within its means. But for now, we have to put it back to you there in the studio, Anne Odida.
All right, thank you so much, Hibak Said, for that very robust conversation with KSS Member of Parliament Julius Ruto. Back here in studio, we'll be engaging entrepreneurs to just understand what they think about this 4.82 trillion shillings, and if at all it relates, or if they relate to it as regards the cost of living, how their businesses are faring on, and if at all the people's budget is something that they will refer to this year's budget as, people's budget. What does it look like to them? We are taking a very short break. We are focusing on the budget this year, and with me in studio, I'll be engaging Wellington here. He's an entrepreneur just at the far end. We have Kate. Catherine is an entrepreneur as well. And of course, we have Kip Korir. He's a senior program officer, physical research and physical research and innovation, right? And I wrote that in very small letters. I was struggling to see what I wrote myself. Karibuni sana, ladies and gentlemen. Yes. All right, we'll be having that conversation on how you would interpret this 4.82 trillion shillings budget. We're taking a very short break. You're watching TV47 Breakfast, but keep interacting with us on our socials, TV47 Kenya on Facebook and on YouTube. On X, it's TV47 Digital, 0793 267 279. That's our WhatsApp line. You can interact with us and be part of this conversation. You, kama mwananchi, what do you think? See you after the break.